Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Invercargill City Council. Welcome to everybody in the chamber today and also everybody who's watching this on live stream. We have a full complement of councillors today, so we have no apologies. We have one person joining us on live stream, and that will be, I don't think he's with us yet, but that will be Tim Cadogan, who'll speak in the public forum. Does anyone have any declaration of interest that they wish to make at this meeting? Yes, Councillor De Vries.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to note that I am a member of Waihopai Runaka and Awarua Runaka.
Anything else? Anyone? Okay. We always begin with a statement of reflection, and this month it's Councillor Boyle.
So one of the key roles of councillors is to work as a team, bringing our diverse opinions to discuss and make decisions around a common issue. We must always be conscious of acting with integrity and in the public's best interest. As we welcome Matua Mike Bain to our team today, we appreciate the role he will play at the council table. He represents the voice of mana whenua and iwi and will ensure that voice is heard as he provides input into the committees he is part of. He will help provide a positive contribution to our city, particularly in advocating for local issues on important kaupapa. We welcome Matua Mike to our team and look forward to getting to know him and working alongside him to continue to develop and strengthen our relationships with Waihopai Runaka. He waka eka noa. We are all in this together.
Well, so we move to public forum, and we have two speakers today. The first one should be Nathan Surendran, although I don't see him there. So we'll take Nathan second if Tim Cadogan is on the line.
Don't have Tim either.
Okay, what do you want to do? Okay, so I think then we will move to the item which is number 14 in the papers, which is the appointment of mana whenua representative. So, Michael Morris, you're going to speak to this one?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through you. This report brings through the recommendation from the Waihopai Runaka of their person that they wish to have appointed to council and its committees as a result of a decision made by this council at its inaugural meeting in November last year. That is to seek the appointment of Matua Mike Bain, and please note that he requests to be referred to as Matua Mike, and will do so for the rest of this report. That appointment is of course one made by council and therefore requires council's approval and the updating of all the council's governance documents to do so. It is also important to note that the Awarua Runaka, one of the two in our rohi, has chosen a different path this time, and while their request to council was for that seat to be disestablished, staff advice is that it is held in abeyance for the term of this council to be reconsidered by the incoming council in 2028. That preserves the position for Awarua should they come to a different conclusion in the future, but also most importantly to preserve the position pending in the amalgamation reorganisation work that is currently underway. That is why there is a subtle difference, Your Worship, between what the Runaka was suggesting in that case and what the council officers are recommending as our recommendation. Other than that, Your Worship, I'm happy to answer any questions.
So, questions for Mr. Morris? Yes, Dan.
One short question. I sent an email yesterday, but I know that we've been having fluctuations with our email system. mana whenua representation at the beginning of the term was also to be determined for the District Licensing Committee, and in the event of a hearing, the mana whenua representative most appropriate could be part of the hearings panel. For example, with Matua Mike, if there was a hearing involving a liquor licence application for Awarua, he would not be eligible to sit on that. So is that able to be incorporated at this point, or is it something you would rather that we did at the next meeting?
Through your worship, it would able to be incorporated with an amendment to the recommendations, adding that the District Licensing Committee under recommendation 2 as an addition.
So therefore, your worship, I'm happy to move the 6 recommendations, noting that in recommendation 6, everything after the word "or" is struck out.
I think what we'll do actually is we'll take 1 to 5 first and separate out items.
Well, in that case, can I move 1 and 2, since the first one is simply the receiving of the report, but in 2, if we add the bullet point, District Licensing Committee, Invercargill District Licensing Committee. It's not an amendment because nothing's been moved.
So you're moving that we receive the report, that Matua Mike be appointed, that we add an additional jury for him, which is to sit on the licensing, what do you call it,
District Licensing Committee.
the licensing committee. So you're moving that. Will someone second that? Okay, thank you, Councillor Boyle. Is there any other discussion of that? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. So what we have just done then is we have moved and approved items 1 and 2.
I subsequently, your worship, move 3 and 4.
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favour say aye. Yes, Councillor
Sorry, I'm just.
Bond. Yeah, put my glasses back on.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure that this is the most appropriate time to ask these couple of questions, given that we've moved into moving the motion so quickly. I'm take your guidance, Mr. Mayor, on this. In the letter to dissolve the Aotearoa representation at this council table for the term, remaining of the term, it highlights in there that there will be alternative engagement methods that Aotearoa will be seeking with council. And I wondered, Michael, has that framework or has that pathway of how that will occur been discussed yet? Because I fear that we're about to move things and yet we don't know what their future looks like.
Through you, Your Worship, we have been engaging with representatives from Aotearoa, particularly Mrs. Paniakut, the former representative, and will be working with the Runaka as soon as they are ready for us to engage with them. We are very keen to do so. Of course, that is speaking only on behalf of the Chief Executive. I can, of course, buy in His Worship the Mayor and Council.
So given your answer, would it be appropriate for our EB Liaisons Committee to help be involved in that engagement in terms of knowing that they don't currently have resources to do that?
Small point of order, your worship, we're not on that item yet.
Thank you,
It's
Councillor
item
Ludlow.
6, sorry.
I think they'll having asked the question, it's probably more efficient if I allow Michael to answer it rather than, but you're right, of course.
Thank you, through Your Worship. Any assistance from the members of Council appointed to our iwi liaison panel will be most gratefully received and will be absolutely part of our considerations in working with the Runaka going forward.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've had recommendations 3 and 4 have been moved and seconded. No other discussion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. Recommendation number 5 is that Matua Mike should be subject to the Code of Conduct and standing orders as if he was an elected member. You're moving that. Thank you, Councillor Boyle, seconded by Councillor Broad. Is there any discussion of that item? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Recommendation number 6 is to consider whether the seat created for Awarua should be placed in abeyance, or it should be revoked for the period of this term. Correct? So, discussion of that. Yes, Councillor Ludlow.
Thanks, Mayor Tom. I personally would, even though Aotearoa have said that they don't wish to fill the seat, prefer that council resolves that the seat is placed into abeyance, which gives Aotearoa the opportunity, should they wish to change their mind in the interim, that they can come back and do so. I think it provides flexibility and also sends a message that we would value their input at the table if they chose to.
Somebody? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Councillor De Vries.
Thank you, Your Worship. Strong participation of Māori in decision-making processes and local government leads to stronger long-term outcomes for our whenua, our water and all people. Ensuring that tangata whenua are heard does not mean that others miss out. It means that we become more robust in our decision-making. Engari, he kapua pauri ki runga I tēnei whare. There is a dark cloud over this house today. The Māori community and tangata tiriti may be feeling quite disheartened about the proposed reduction in Māori voice at that table, and I can really empathise with that today. Regardless of the fact that this was not our decision to make, it is now really important that this council proactively consider what we are doing to ensure that Māori contributions are valued, appreciated and enabled. We carry a responsibility to fulfil that duty, and it is written into legislation. I agree with Ria Bond. We do have an iwi liaison committee that currently is in almost name only and acts as an iwi response committee. For me, this is not good enough. It is now appropriate to ensure that we have the mechanisms as a council in place going forward. I cannot agree to close the door to mokopuna Māori that may aspire to represent the views of Awarua in the future. So my vote will also be going towards putting the seat into abeyance today and to ensuring that we work very hard to become a council that Māori want to work with going forward.
So, okay. Councillor Dermody.
Yeah, thanks. Look, I'm also in favour of putting the position into abeyance and hearing what Councillor De Vries has spoken to, particularly in relationship to the work that the iwi liaison committee now needs to stand up and do. So as part of that committee, I'm very willing and able to work through how we do engage and keep the relationship with the Awarua Runanga. Just a question, if I may, if we do set it, the position as into abeyance, what the funding that's tagged to that role, what happens to that funding if it's put into abeyance? Could someone answer that, please?
Through yourself, Your Worship, that discussion will happen as part of the annual plan, where that's pending a decision in relation to this particular report.
Okay, so they're separate. Thank you.
Councillor Bond.
Kia ora, Your Worship. Speaking to this motion, I will be honest and say that I felt quite aggrieved by this te when I received the agenda that Aotearoa had decided to move forward with this intention. And the reason why I felt like that was a bit of mama in my heart was that Māori have tried so hard to get here around different council tables, and to see the requests for dismantling voice of Māori, especially mana whenua, that not only know their land, but they know their whakapapa, and they actually bring to this table so much more than what a lot of people realise. I felt hurt in my heart that this had happened, and rapidly tried to figure out, what can we do to save this. Like Councillor De Vries, decisions made today shouldn't hinder the choices of our mokopuna in the future, and this concerns me gravely. I do support, on that note, that we put this role into abeyance, and I say that because I'm deeply aggrieved by what's happened. The Iwi Liaisons Committee is a committee I see that could have an amazing future in a pathway with walking with our Māori voices in our community, and I would like to see that down the road formulated with some sort of formula as to how that could be better resourced to not just be, in some people's eyes, tokenistic for Māori to have that committee, but actually a true working committee for our community.
Councillor Bond, since we have no other persons indicated they wish to speak, do you wish to move item 6 that we put in abeyance?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Someone second that, please. Yeah, okay, Councillor Boyle. Is there any other discussion? All those in favour say aye. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bond.
I just have one more point, and I'm not sure, again, I'm take your leadership as to whether this is an appropriate area to say this, but I know through our agenda item and our recommendations, and you opened with it, that we've been directed to call our mana whenua Waihopai representative Mātua, and Your Worship, where I come from in Northland, that name's gifted to people in our whānau that we know and respect, like my father, my uncles, my cousins, and people of esteem in my iwi and hapu. So I find it hard for me to bestow that respectful name upon our new incoming representative because I simply don't know him. So for me, I regretfully would like to inform this council that for me, I will be calling Mike from his mana whenua representative and his name.
So then I suggest you address him as Mr Bain in that case. Okay, so you have moved and we have a seconder. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. So with that we have approved Mātua Mike to be a member of this council and to sit on a number of committees. So, Mātua Mike, will you come forward and thank you, and accompanied by Joe.
I agree that I will faithfully and impartially and according to the best of my skill and judgment execute and perform with the best interests of the Cardiff City, powers the authorities, the duty vested in or imposed upon me as Mātua representative within the Cardiff City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, and the other act that deliver Cardiff State 24th March 2006.
Get your signature in mine.
Matua, Tom, e te koro matua tuarua Grant, me anō e ka mima o tēnei tipu, e ka kai kaunihira nei, o te kaunihira o te taone o Waihopai, e hui huka mai nei a tēnei rā. I te taha nei o te kai hautu o tēnei kaunihira hoki, me ka kai mahi, e noho ana i tēnei wā, nei rā te mihi ka wātu ki a koutou katoa. Mō tō koutou aroha manaki taka, tau toko taka, te aki tako hoki ka hoa mai. Ki te pau mana whenua o Waihopai Runaka, e hui huka mai nei a tēnei rā. Ki te whakahono te ai, kei waikunui a koutou, me ki te noho ai, ki ruke i te tepu nei, o ka kōmiti e tuana, e ka wā kei te hiki mai nei. Nei. Nā reira, nei rā te mi, ki a koutou katoa anō. Me anō e te whānau tautoko o Waihopai Runaka, me te whānau hoki o he toko nui, ai, me whānau tautoko katoa. I tai mai nei i tēnei rā, ai, ki te whakanuia, te timataka, me te oati taka hoki, o a Mātua Mike, ara ko te hākoro a Mike hoki, a tēnei rā, kai waikunui a koutou, a tēnei wā, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Ora mai rā tātou katoa. On behalf of Waihopai Runaka, the whānau who have gathered here today, it is indeed a huge honour and pleasure for us to be supporting Mike here today in his swearing in for the next 3 years. We're really honoured as well to actually stand up another mana whenua rep for another 3 year too. And yet we are saddened by the fact that our relations down the road have decided not to have a representative standing beside Mike, but hey, we're still here, and we looking forward to forging a better, even more better working relationship with Tom and your whānau going forward over the next 3 years. So, kia ora, everybody.
Kia ora.
Reira tuturu mai aka maua kia tīna! Tīna! Hauie! Huie! Taiki!
Well, that was wonderful, wasn't it? So, anyone who has nothing else to do for the next 4 hours is very welcome to stay.
Don't feel obliged.
So, do we have, I don't think Nathan's in the room that I can see. Do we have Tim online? No, okay. So, we will move to the minutes of the meeting held at Council on Tuesday, the 24th of February.
They're confirmed, Mayor Tom.
Thank you, and seconded by Councillor Dermody. Is there any discussion of those? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So we move to the minutes of the Water Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 3rd of March. Councillor Dermody, do you wish to move those?
I'm happy to move those and the recommendations, Mayor Campbell.
Including the recommendations. Councillor Stewart,
Sorry.
Councillor, sorry.
I was just seconding if you needed one.
Okay. So Councillor Stewart beat it. So are there any comments or questions on those? So they've been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. So then we have the minutes of the Infrastructure and Growth Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 3rd of March, with some recommendations coming from that. Councillor Crackett?
I sure am moving the minutes and the following recommendations.
Okay. Will someone second that? Thank you about you seconding it. Yeah. Councillor Boyle, are there any discussion of any of those recommendations or questions? No. In which case, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Sorry, I left my pen over here. Thank you. So, then we have the, I take it. So then we have the curbside waste services policy. Have I missed one?
No, we're up to the Bluff Community Board now.
Oh, where am I? Oh, that was part of the, sorry, that was part of the,
Yes.
I wondered where that came from. Okay, so we have the minutes of the Bluff Community Board meeting held on Monday, the 9th of March. Was someone who was
Happy
there
to move
move
those, Mayor Kimball.
Thank you, Councillor Demery, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Is there any discussion of those? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. And you, that was including the recommendation,
Yes.
wasn't it?
Yes.
Then we have the minutes of the Community and Regulatory Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 10th of March, and a recommendation which comes from that. Councillor
Councillor
Ludlow?
Broad.
Yeah. I can move that and the recommendation.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's
all right.
right.
Happy to.
Yeah,
I can
Councillor
second it.
Broden, seconded by Councillor Demery. So you've moved the commercial use of parks and reserves policy too at the same time? Okay. Is there any discussion or questions of those? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. So then we have the minutes of the extraordinary council meeting held on Tuesday, the 10th of March. Will someone move that we receive those? Thank you, Councillor Boyle, and seconded Councillor De Vries. Any discussion of those? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Then we have the minutes of the Risk and Assurance Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 17th of March, with recommendations coming from that to Council. Will someone who was there move those? Someone who's a member, rather. Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor Tom McNaughton. Is there any discussion of those? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried.
Yeah, there is that tabled item as well, which relates.
So then we have a tabled item which is part of that. That's the recommendation from the Risk and Assurance Committee with respect to the cost.
Your Worship, there's been further work done in relation with Audit New Zealand. That recommendation delegated the Mayor, it was the Chair, to undertake further work with Audit New Zealand in an effort to reduce the fees. That letter that has been tabled indicates that Audit New Zealand have agreed to lower their fee. I believe it is by $20,000, but that is subject to what the letter actually says, and a further $10,000 in their disbursements they would be charging. So it is that amount that is contained in the letter as tabled that will be the audit fee for the coming year.
So we've already actually approved, haven't we, those minutes, which approves the maximum audit fee.
Yes.
So we don't need to do anything else. We've
This
already,
is just information,
we just note the fact that it's a bit less than.
a bit less than what it was going to be. Yes, Your Worship.
So then we have the minutes of the local alcohol policy hearings and deliberation held on Wednesday, the 18th of March, and some recommendations which come from that.
Thank you,
Councillor.
Mayor Tom.
Yeah.
The hearings and deliberation were last Wednesday. I would move that the it's received and the recommendations to council are confirmed.
To second that.
So any questions from anyone? I do have one actually, Councillor. I think I'm right in saying that this is a paper that recommends that alcohol not be allowed to be sold at events which take place on school grounds. Isn't it? That was an additional.
Yes, broadly speaking, there are some discretionary conditions around it, but yes.
Have we asked the schools what the implications of that is? Because they hire out their grounds, don't they, for things?
No greater than the rest of the community. The intent of the LAP was to ensure that children, while on school grounds, weren't faced with alcohol as events were being set up or as fundraisers were happening on the grounds. I know that there have been questions since about the likes of a school reunion, for example, which is something I've received direct communication about. And it's discretionary, and that if there were events for a school reunion, a significant event, that conditions could be in place that ensure the alcohol was loaded in and cleared away before school, and so that the students weren't faced with it. And that keeps with the intent of the lab.
So it's not a complete ban, it just requires people, if they
Requires
wish to,
some mitigation on a case-by-case basis, yes.
to make it, and the decision would be with the chairman of that committee or with the chairman of that committee.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or discussion on that matter? If not, then it's already been moved. Will somebody second? Thank you, Councillor De Vries. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. So then we have the Great South 6-month update, and we have Chami and her team, some of her team, here to present. Chami, you can bring up to the table anybody else that you wish, if you...
Bobby and Mark will join us. Good afternoon, councillors. Congratulations, Marta and Mike, on your seat at the table. It's awesome. We'll have to bring you up to speed really quickly about Great South and what we do. It seems like it's been a while since I've been here. I'm not going to present today. We're just going to have a quick update from Bobby and Mark because we understand you've got a very, very full agenda, so we want to make it quick and snappy. So Bobby will touch on some of the areas that she's working on, and then Mark will touch on some of the tourism stuff as well. So I'll invite Bobby up. Where are you? Oh, there you are. Is our presentation available? I do have it on a stick if you want as well. Oh,
Which
there.
way?
Actually, Chami, we probably are a little bit ahead of time because we haven't had the public forum. So you don't need to absolutely belt through it. If you want, you can spend a little bit of time. It's an important
Thank
matter.
you, Your Worship. We're happy to take questions at the end as well, if there are. Go and sit.
Kia ora again. So look, I just want to touch on a couple of things around commercial accommodation, housing, and I'm just going to start with this slide, which you did see this morning. But look, it is probably the significance and scale of some of the developments that are underway, but even changes, for example, with Alliance and the Irish buyout. Like, this is all going to have implications on existing and future industry. So it's just really interesting when you start to look at it that way, as well as that big stat of all those new homes being built in Queenstown. I won't touch too much on agriculture as we mentioned it today, but again, there's a couple of things that have happened that have given us a time frame to work towards. So before we were sort of waiting for, when is it going to happen? We've got a little bit more of an idea now. Look, the next couple of slides are around housing. So to give you an update on your rental market, so your median rent is $490 a week, and that has levelled off in recent times. So we had quite a bit of growth. You can see from the wee table there, it is quite little. But look, it's levelled off a bit, but you still do have the highest rents in the region. Another really important thing here is the rental affordability has deteriorated. So if you look at that bottom graph there, you'll see that the line going up is bad because that indicates that there's deteriorating affordability. And I'll show you the next slide. It says the same thing. So I'll just move to this one. So look, your housing market, your house prices have continued their upward trend, and they have passed those 2022 highs. But the difference here is that our prices are continuing to go up, whereas the rest of the country, it's sort of gone down and up. But we've still got this upward trend, even though it's slowed down compared to other growth. So that, it's still that whole, it's affordable for people to come in because compared to other places in the country. So the average house price is still $910,000, whereas ours for Invercargill City, it's $533,000. But it's becoming less affordable for people living here, and the main reason for that is that the household income has not gone up. at the same pace as what the rental prices and house prices are. So people just get the same amount of money. They're having to use that to pay more of their rent or their mortgage. Okay, and that housing affordability slide, again, you'll just see that affordability is better for New Zealand than Southland. It's deteriorating quicker down here because of that. And the last slide I've got is just around commercial accommodation. So every year we ring all the commercial accommodation providers and we just ask them how they're getting on and if they've had a change in rooms. So obviously we've had a new hotel in the past 12 months and we've seen 150 rooms come on for that, but all up you've got just over 1,000 motel rooms, 139 dorm beds, 173 campsites. So on the right-hand side there, what we also do is we track occupancy, in terms of how full are these accommodation properties at different times of the year. And what's quite pleasing to see is that your line is getting flatter, which is good, because when it's not flat, it means that there's a lot of seasonality, which Mark will talk about. And other parts of the region are quite seasonal, often because there's weather and things like that. So that's probably, heading towards that, trying to drive events and other things at the shoulder periods or off-peak, which is great. What else to say about that? Of interest is that your occupancy has continued to go up. So with the new hotel coming in, there's been more traffic come in, so more use for rooms, which is really pleasing to see. So it hasn't taken away from existing properties, it's actually brought in new. That's me.
Bobby.
Kia ora everybody, my name's Mark Fruit, I'm the GM of Tourism and Events for those that haven't met before. Look, I'll just, Bobby's pretty much covered off the improved occupancy across Southland. Guest nights continue to grow internationally and domestic, which is great. We're starting to see international flows right around the region, which is one of our objectives. And the other thing too, and that I don't have up there in terms of a stat, but the international visitor spend is growing across the region, and that's something we've been working quite hard for, because we know that Fiordland gets its fair share of internationals, but we're starting to see Southland now growing in that space, and the opportunities around capacity growth and things like that with accommodation is helping drive that. I want to spend a bit of time, Tom, I won't belt through this now, I can slow down a wee bit. So, is looking at events, and I just want to firstly just give a bit of a rundown of, within Great South team, how events work. So, events are broken into two categories. Business events, and business events is the likes of meetings, conferences, incentive groups, versus events, and we call them unmissable in community. Our unmissable events are our very big ones around the regions. For instance, Waimumi Southern Field Days, Burt Munro, George Begg every second year, and things like that. We call them our big ones, so unmissables. And then we've got a lot of community events, and so we look at how we support those and how do we do that. Events boost, as Bobby said, look, events boost opportunity across seasonality. So we flatten out the curve in terms of our occupancy rates, our visitors to town. It helps boost connectivity, whether that's by bus, train now with the mainlander coming down here, air connectivity, and it boosts community involvement and opportunity. And by that I mean, with a lot of our events that we have, the support is by volunteer groups. So they come in and they get the opportunity to make some income for their various groups that they belong to, and helps our communities grow. And it's also events boost pipeline for bookings. So if we've got events 2-3 years out, our accommodation gets bookings in advance, so they know what's coming, which is a big help for them. Our role in events is that we operationally assist in the delivery of the Burt Munro, and by that I mean we do marketing. But we also help on the ground delivery of logistics for the event, and during that time. We facilitate and seek funding opportunities from government or local, and a lot of that's alongside ILT. And by that I mean when there's opportunities. Last 4 or 5 years, we've seen quite a lot of government funding coming through and things called the regional events funds, the regional events promotional funds. A lot of those come through the RTO, the Regional Tourism Organisation, and by that they come into our bank account. Then we handle the logistics around which events meet our, not necessarily governments, our strategies for our communities. And so we handle that. So, and then if they meet our key pillars for each of those events, then we can pass on whatever they've applied for and help them assist through that. Promotion, we've got our digital tools. Southland NZ is a big beast of a website. It's got a lot of spread and a lot of eyes. And then we've got very good digital social media and things like that, which we support with our storytelling around events. Capability, we've got a very good events toolbox in terms of capability. And capability is from how do you get road closures, how do you work in finding that funding, how do you do a application form. In a lot of cases we'll do it. And we use those online tools and help people come in there. And then identifying opportunities, and that's gaps. And once again, the other gaps that suit our particular strategic pillars. Food is an obvious one. You know, we have Bluff Oyster Festival, we're looking at other things that we can do. We identify opportunities for those events in times of the year when we're soft. For instance, with Invercargill, we've got a lot of corporate business that comes through here. So whilst we've got year-round flow through of people using the accommodation, there's still opportunities within those parts of the year. Is where would something fit nicely in those spaces. And business events, and they attract, that's what I've said, we look at attracting conferences and meetings to the city. So we've got great venues, without a doubt, and now we've got alongside the IL tenants accommodation, we've got great accommodation that now match our facilities. Our facilities work really, really well for the size of conferences that we target, and now that we've got the space to fill with rooms, we are on the radar in that space. We work pretty hard in that. So, and when I mean, what does that mean, working pretty hard in that space? It's very much a sales role. So we go out to shows, we get contacts, we look at filling a pipeline, fill the funnel, and then we get businesses that pop down through the pipeline. And by the pipeline, we run for mills. If we can get them to town, we can convert them. So we work pretty hard in that conversion space. Press the right button. And look, this is just a little bit of an example from the last quarter of 25. We had fewer large-scale events, and that was a lot of that was weather-related. The SBS, the tour moved into January, and look, and events are harder to keep happening. Costs are escalating, and resourcing, it's harder and harder to get volunteers. So in terms of how we look at perhaps not growing as more events, is maybe looking at how we boost some of the ones we've got and maximise things, while still looking at the opportunity with the gaps. Business events are down on last year, and that really reflects a current domestic business environment, but we know things are starting to pick up a wee bit. We'll see where we go with the current climate and what's happening with global geopolitical stuff that's going on, but we can't do a lot about that. We can just keep doing what we're doing and keep going hard in that space. It's interesting, the number of business delegates, we might have been down on events, but the number of business delegates we hosted has remained stable, which means we've basically had larger, shorter events. So we've maintained those numbers, which says to us the demand and opportunity that we have for the region still sits there nicely. So we just keep out there and working on that. I just want to quickly touch on the City Centre Coordination Agreement we have with Invercargill City Council. Look, that's just to touch on the agreement and purpose. I won't go through that in terms of meeting those, because we've got a very good team that's working in that place, in that space. And we have several types of activation. So it's Great South led, whereas we'll get out there and we'll drive an event. Then we've got community partnerships, whether it's the Multicultural Society or whatever, they'll come in and we'll make space for them to be part of making the city centre vibrant and doing what they do, supporting existing activations, that stuff that's already happening. We may boost it through our digital media and see if we can boost the numbers to get them coming, and then we run retail spend and marketing campaigns. And that's done across every quarter. We're just about to enter quarter 4 at the end of the At the end of the financial year, we would have done about 25 activations. I don't know whether many of you have been down, but we build on them time and time again, and we get great exposure with them. It's more and more about getting that town busy, getting the town centre happening, and ensuring that we've got a vibrant community, which really helps in terms of that live and work, educate and invest in a space that's happening place. So, and look, our focus is on, we're looking at better economic and destination outcome modelling for improved reporting. How do we feed back to you in the right way that you actually see what is it that we're doing and the benefit to our communities? That may be through better event reporting in terms of what are the economic benefits around our events and getting that modelling sorted. We've got a challenging global outlook without a doubt. I'm sure that most of you have read what's going on, and that'll be interesting to see. In terms of some of our long haul markets, we had some disruption, but a bit of it's bounced back. But we're going to have to see what in the midterm fuel pricing and the price of tickets is going to hold. We focus on our domestic opportunities in East Coast Australia. For long haul, it's mainly international media that we support. For our actually direct through sales channels is domestic opportunities and East Coast Australia. The one thing when we have long haul trouble is we know that short haul is an opportunity, so people will stay closer to home. If you're in New Zealand and you're earning $1 in Auckland, it's the same dollar in Invercargill. If you're earning $1 in Sydney, it's 80 cents here. So there's an opportunity for Trans-Tasman, but within New Zealand, our dollar's a dollar, so we're not losing out on exchange rate. We continue to drive regional spread through collaboration, and that's through the opportunities we've had through Southern Way and things like that. We're about to refresh the Murihiku event strategy, which is an opportunity through our consultation as to how we work better with the communities, with councils. We view ourselves as part of solutions. We're not necessarily the whole solution, and that gives us an opportunity to work together on that. So, and that's things like improved event coordination. For instance, 2028, we have field days in the Burt Munro Challenge. They clash. It's a real loss of opportunity for us in that space because we can fill 2 weeks rather than combined to fill 1 week. We get 2 weeks of opportunity out of it, so do our communities. So happy to take some questions. That's my last slide, and thank you very, very much for the opportunity.
Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Boyle.
So looking at event coordination, have you made a change to the Burt Munro and that clash?
We've been talking. We're trying to.
You're trying?
Yep. Yeah, look, there's a lot of things confirmed in advance, and this is one of those things that I think it's a lead-in that has happened, and it's historically going to be difficult to alter, but we'll do our best.
Mr. Broad.
Oh, thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation today. Always enjoy it. Particularly enjoyed your focus on events today. Thanks for a bit of clarity there. Unintentionally opened a can a couple of weeks ago, but I think with that, what I took from the most recent statement of intent is that there isn't an intention from Great South beyond Burt Munro to be supporting in the delivery or capability building of local events. So I guess what have I missed? I'm looking forward to, I know it's 2026, but I'm looking at a $500,000 spend in kind of event delivery that's noticed there. So I think I'm clearly missing something in the statement of intent and the resource that's been put into event delivery is noted in this.
It's not a $500,000 of event delivery funding. Look, to be honest, I think the thing that is not you've missed is possibly I've missed with communication.
Yeah.
So the one is clearly communicating what we're doing, and I think I can improve on that from what I put out. Also, is probably the opportunity within is to be able to, and I know the council's pretty busy, but I'm more than happy to come in here and actually drill deeper into what we're doing, and spending maybe a 20 minutes, half an hour presentation just to update you, because in terms of on the ground delivery of an event, yes, we don't have the team so much to do that anymore, but in terms of we've got enough of a team to build capability, we still do the Burt. There's other events that would love us to be part of delivery on the ground, but we do have some outstanding digital assets in terms of our natural fit is often around that promotion and outward push in terms of the communication.
So the question of how we promote the city and how we organise events and how we coordinate them across the city, I mean, is a real live issue. And I'm just wondering, as he looks at Rhiannon, where does that fit into a long-term plan? Or do we have a workshop where that would be appropriate to be discussing that issue particularly, and therefore inviting Great South to come to that?
Mayor Tom, can I just add that, as I mentioned in the presentation, is that we're doing the refresh of the event strategy. So it's a really great opportunity now to sit down and knuckle out a pathway that we can work collaboratively on, because it's we've got a great opportunity. So we've got all the facilities.
Mr. De Vries.
Thank you, Your Worship. Awesome, guys. I'm curious around the event stuff, and you've noted that you identify opportunities or gaps. Who gets that information, and then what happens with it?
That comes into us. We'll talk to. It comes in through all channels, and Councillor Broad. We've had some contact with some people who have been in contact with you, so that's good. So it comes into us. Then we'll identify which groups that is best to go back out to. Often it's coming from the groups themselves going, is there an opportunity? So, and often with events, to crank them off it's funding. Yeah, and then there's capability. Sometimes it's all the above. So that's it.
And sorry, just one more. I liked seeing the activation plan for the inner city. I actually think that would be quite useful in some regards, and to either the business events, the pipelines, what you're getting from your trade shows, and actually showing us, the results from that. Then we can actually see the outcomes. I know that through a pipeline you get a lot of drop off, but actually seeing kind of what we're translating from a conversation at a trade show through to a pipeline. It might be 3 years from now and lots change in that time, but it would be really helpful to know. And the other one was, it was just about the trade shows and event pipeline, I guess, in the results that we're getting. Would be good to read. Thank you.
Yep, note taken on that, and that gets back to those comms. We're improving those. So,
you, Councillor Dermody.
Yeah, thanks, Mick. And we just want to loop back to the question that Steve asked. So on page 82 of Board Books, or 13 of your report and your financial statements, if I'm reading this correctly, there was 538,000 allocated to events and $287,000 for delivery, and the statement of intent for the next 6 months is $494,000. So what are we getting for that? Because I think I heard you say we've got some activation, IP, and also systems, but you don't actually allocate any other resourcing to it. Is that correct, or have I misheard that?
Staffing numbers, yeah. So the people.
So that's people, but what are they doing?
Yeah. We've got the 2 people in the business events, and we had more than that just up until recently, and it's their role to go out there and fill the pipeline and bring that conversion piece into landing it for the city. I just need to go back and look at the numbers and clarify for you. So I just don't have that picture in my head.
So, well, just to be clear, so for the forecast funding, which is $500,000, what could our community expect to see in that events area in 2026 for the $500,000 invested?
Well, in terms of, sorry, you want to speak?
No.
No, just in terms of looking at what that economic return is we want to get that modelling sorted so we can actually put an economic footprint down of what we've brought back into the city, and it will be the filling of a pipeline in terms of bookings, out into future dates, because it won't all arrive next year, and ensuring that we have a calendar that is achieving the objectives of what we want from the organisation in terms of that community engagement, unmissable events and business events, and how we're pushing it out into the market through promotion.
Follow-up question. So would it be reasonable to expect that the next time you present to us, we would see that pipeline in terms of the confirmed events as a result of
Correct.
that work for our city?
Yep.
And not the existing events, but new events?
New events, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Jamie, you want to comment?
Through you, Your Worship. We're more than happy to give you an oversight into that. We just wasn't prepared because we thought it was a quick, short, snappy sort of presentation today. But more than happy to share that information. So predominantly, as you know, Great South's majority of our resources go towards staffing. And the deliverables from those staffing, including those pipelines, some of the deliverables from the city centre, obviously, contract, which you saw today. Some of the work around the marketing, the FMILs, all of that stuff we can bring back to you, bring back to the whole council, because I think it'll be valuable to see that. And just going back to our workshop this morning around about the economic development opportunities, we're looking at your next long-term cycle. We've identified that our current SOI in the current status is probably not serving the purpose that we need, because we get these questions almost every time that we come to council. So we need to do something better. That's what Mark was talking about. So we're evaluating how we're going to show value to the ratepayers, funding that is provided to us, so that we can discuss that through the Joint Shareholder Committee and get an agreement. So the whole process is around your letter of expectation, ISOI draft, you feedback on that, then the SOI is confirmed, then we deliver against that. So it's a little too late for us to address that for 26-27 year, but definitely for the next cycle, that's what we intend to do. And we've engaged some economists to support us with that information, so you have real, data. I just also, if I may, through you, Your Worship, one more thing to add is, like today there was an announcement, 9.8% increase in GDP, the largest for any region in New Zealand. That isn't haphazardly achieved. These are things that have happened because of, initiatives and implementations that we've carried out on behalf, all of us. I mean, I'm not talking about Great South in particular. It's a conscious effort from everybody. So the plans that we have and the work that we do generally show those results later. And so it is important that the councillors, you're comfortable with what we're doing and how we're showing those results. So we take it upon ourselves to make sure that we will have KPIs that resonate with you, that is understood, and we can agree, and then we can move forward from there. But on Councillor Dermody's point, we will provide the council through Michael or through Trudy a report so that you can see that breakdown. And that will be relevant for the last 6 months.
Thank you. Councillor Broad, did you have a last question? This will be the last question.
Yeah, sorry. I think I want to note there's so much to celebrate, and that's reflected in this report. It was reflected in our workshop today, and I was beaming for most of this afternoon, just looking at the great work that is being done, and I want to acknowledge that. And just noting the new experiences, I think this is a great part of this report. I've seen the good work of the local cruise network. That should be celebrated and what that's doing. But just out of interest, the iwi partnered experience, I believe it's one happening in Bluff that I was particularly excited by. Can you talk through what that relationship is like in terms of support and facilitation and helping to enable that initiative?
Yep, you go ahead. I did it.
Yeah, look, how we operate with new entrants in the market is we work with them as to how we can get them into trade-ready state, which is that capability building, and then we take them out to market. We'll bring trade down here, and we can introduce them as new entrants to what we call FMILs and things like that. Yes, we've got a new entrant in Māori tourism space, which is Mitigation Māori tourism, which we're really excited about. In terms of that reporting, was a bit early in jumping the gun on that, but needed to move that out another 6 months when we've probably got a little bit more depth to that relationship. But in terms of It's exciting to have a new entrant. We're building the experience portfolio in Bluff, but not only in Bluff, across the city, because they work, Bluff and Invercargill work beautifully together in terms of very close proximity to visitation and growing that. So, no, in terms of those new entrants, it's very exciting. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think we should leave it at that, actually, because we have run out of time. Chairman, look, I just want to say one last thing. I think it's extremely difficult sometimes to, when you look at all of the things the Great South do, and people often ask that question, you know, what value do they add in a kind of helicopter fashion? And it's so difficult to you know, separate out the, you know, what contributes, what's made a difference. Two things I want to mention, actually, that I think are current. One is this morning we saw that the statistics, as you referred to, came out that Southland yet again is the fastest growing province in New Zealand, with a rate of 9.8%, I think it was, GDP growth last year. And what contribution did Great South make to that? Well, we're never going to know, right? We're never going to be able to separate that out, but some, certainly. And then I look at the other thing I want to mention is the decarbonisation work which you have been doing for the last few years, and how important that is today as we sit here with the Strait of Hormuz situation, with diesel prices going through the roof, and we have an economy which is obviously, it hasn't been completely, decarbonised, but we have moved a long way from where we were, say, 10 years ago. And I understand that I think 60 boilers in the last few years have been converted to renewable energy. Not all of them are diesel, of course, but from renewable to renewable energy. In today's circumstances, that is a really important contribution which Great South specifically has made to Southland, and I think it's worth recognising that when we, since you're giving your report today. So,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, councillors. Good afternoon.
You want someone to move? I'm happy to move the recommendations.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon, Chairman. But anyway, you're certainly free to go. But we do have to move that. So you're moving both recommendations, Councillor De Vries.
Yes, sir.
Seconded by Councillor Bond. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Okay. So we will actually step back to public forum because we do have Tim Cadogan online. Tim, I think, as everybody knows by this time, is now the engagement specialist for the Water Services Authority. And I guess, Tim, you're speaking to us in that capacity.
Yes, absolutely, Mayor Tom. Kia ora, great to see you.
So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Great to see you and the team in Invercargill. I hope everything's fine down there. I wish it was a situation where I could actually come and visit you rather than doing it remotely, but such is life. Hey, look, if it's okay with councillors, I'd like to move on to a slideshow presentation. It's basically a Water 101. There's some new councillors there, so there's some returning councillors, and I found in my time as an elected member 13 years worth of that, a refresh was never a bad thing either. So if it's all right with you, Your Worship, I will endeavour my hardest to find the jolly thing on my computer, and okay, we might be off to a flying stop. That's disappointing. Why on earth is that not available to me? Sorry, I'll talk amongst myself. So look, one of the things that I'll be focusing on today is what is happening with the state of drinking water in New Zealand, because Taumata Arawai, we were set up 4 years ago now as a consequence of the Havelock North drinking water disaster, which happened in 2016. Now, I will have people say to me, and there may be some in the room thinking this today, I'm still desperately trying to find why this presentation won't work. Yeah, some in the room may say, well, Tim, that was 10 years ago. Let's move on. So I'll bring you up to date with where we are today. Now, hopefully, you'll be seeing, instead of me very shortly, a big green screen. No, that's not working for you either. Dear, oh dear. This is the 42nd time I've done this presentation and the first time that this has happened, so this is disappointing. Let's try again. Here we go. We're going to be in business now. I have no idea why that didn't work. It must be because Invercargill was a long way away from Wellington. Ex-politician making up nonsense. Right, so 10 years ago, we wound up in a situation with the water debacle at Havelock North, where 5,000 people were hospitalised. You're still not seeing that, are you?
You still look gorgeous, Tim.
All right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to speak rather than look at the slides, because we're just going to waste our time trying to get this to work. That's very strange. So, what I'll hear from some people in the street, sometimes I heard it when I was a mayor as well, is that, hey, 2016, it's a long time ago, let's move on. So I want to bring you up to date with where things are right now. And on your screen, if it wasn't for the fact my face won't get out of the way, is a picture of a camping ground in the South Island. And that camping ground had unfortunately suffered from a E. coli outbreak last year, so September last year. And what happened was that their water, they were self-supplying, and their water supply basically failed. They continued to have drinking water go into the camp from that failed supply with the E. coli in it. Now, it's important to know that E. coli is it's an indicator species. So what it means is it's actually quite easy, if it's there, to find E. coli in drinking water. And it indicates that there's a problem, and the problem is that basically you've got poo in your water, and if you've got that in your water, you're going to have things other than E. coli. E. coli is a bacteria that in itself isn't necessarily always bad. You will have some in your digestion, your digestion system at the moment. But unfortunately, in this camping ground in Canterbury, a very bad form of E. coli was in the water supply. A number of children got very sick, a number were hospitalised, 6 I think were hospitalised, and one poor child stayed in hospital for 10 days, with ongoing concerns reported in the media about her kidney function. Now, that was in September. Every week here at Taumata Arawai, we get the updates that are provided to labs from across the country as water organisations are tested, be they private suppliers or council suppliers. If somebody triggers an E. coli warning, we get to know about it. Last week across New Zealand, 10 suppliers had E. coli in their water, so 10 suppliers across the country had faecal material in their water, and 2 of those suppliers were actually council suppliers. A couple of weeks ago, actually 4 of them were council suppliers. So if there's one thing that I would like to get across to councillors today, it is this. It is that while most of our water in New Zealand is good most of the time, not all of our water is good all of the time. And that's simply why Taumata Arawai is here, to try to get us to the point where you can go anywhere in New Zealand, drink a public water supply or even a private water supply, and be confident that you're not going to get sick from pathogens in the water. How do you do that? Well, it's a matter of getting the basics in place. You want to look after your source water. You're lucky in Invercargill, you've got one surface water supply, so you don't have multitudes of source waters to worry about. Filtration is used to remove a lot of pathogens, but also with a surface water supply like you have, it's important that filtration and good quality filtration is used, because it allows the disinfection to work. So either chlorination, or UV treatment are the 2 that are used. Chlorination's been around for over 100 years in the treatment of water supplies, and UV treatment a bit more recent. And the other crucial part is secure distribution, looking after your pipe network, because it makes sense. If water can get out of your pipes, if the pressure drops, water will get in, and it'll bring with it bugs. The chief science advisor here would have a fit if he heard me using the word bugs, but never mind. And how do you do that? We talk about multi-barrier protection, so council suppliers are expected to have multi-barrier protection. And I talked about chlorination. So chlorination will deal with the bacteria that I talked about. It will deal with E. coli. It will deal with any other bacteria too. It will kill viruses such as norovirus, and you definitely don't want to have norovirus in your system, that's for sure. But what it won't do is it will not deal with a form of pathogen called protozoa. So protozoa is a cryptosporidium, which made quite a number of people sick in Queenstown a couple of years ago. Giardia, you definitely don't want that. Chlorination won't affect them. They're tough little beggars, and you actually need, that's where the UV treatment comes in, because UV will knock out protozoas. It actually neutralises them. And then you also need residual disinfection in your pipe network. So that means that you put a little squirt, and I mean it's like a drop in a bathtub, of chlorine into the water as it leaves the treatment plant so that it stays safe at the last tap in the treatment plant, as safe as it was in the first tap. And that's the simple 101 of how to have multi-barrier protection. Now, you as councillors are going to have, I guarantee you have already, if you haven't I'm amazed, but you will have somebody say to you one day, and in fact you might be gearing up to say it to me, look, your standards are too jolly high. You know, they're too tough, they're too expensive, they're too high. So this is what I want to put to you is this. It's really simple. All that the standards are doing is taking out the pathogens that will make people sick, the bacteria, the protozoas and the viruses that will make people sick. Now, if people say the standards are too high, ask them this. How much poo is appropriate to have in your drinking water? Because I haven't met anyone yet who will give a number other than none. Generally speaking, I haven't met anyone who goes, it's okay to have a little bit. So that's the simple thing. If people accept that you shouldn't really have fecal material in your, oh good, you've got your slides out in front of you now. So I'm on slide 4. If people accept
Tim, can I interrupt you just a second?
Yeah.
We actually have been emailed your slide pack. So if people want to get into their email system, and people as in councillors want to get into your email system, you'll find it there. So once everybody's done that in the next minute or so, you can start to, you can assume we're looking at the slides.
Back on track. Fantastic. I'm still absolutely baffled. Although I'm of the vintage where I can guarantee that whatever's gone wrong with the PowerPoint presentation, it will boil down to being user error somehow. I just don't know what I've done. Okay, so I'm on the slide now that basically has the 4 slices of Swiss cheese. And what I was just completing there was that, yeah, if people generally agree you shouldn't have poo in your water, so if they say the standards are too high, that's all the standards are doing, is saying we're not going to allow things to get in the water that will make people sick. So if you move on to the next slide, which is headed Council Supplies, that talks about what we expect from Council Supplies. It's pretty simple stuff. Comply with the rules or an acceptable solution, which I'll explain what that is shortly. Fully comply with the standards. Respond promptly to safety risks with appropriate action. So if a boil water notice needs to be put in place because something's gone wrong at the plant, you've got the robust risk management plans to do that, and you put a boil water notice in place and keep people safe. And demonstrate progress towards resilience. Now, we are looking at all council supplies to be resilient to disruptions by 2028. So Invercargill, pretty good actually. So for a lot of councils that have a lot of supplies, that's going to be quite a challenge. I'm not so sure it's going to be such an issue for you guys. Now the next slide has what suppliers can expect from us. It's a pyramid, a coloured pyramid. Basically what you can expect from us is a proportionate response, and that's across the whole water sector. So as my 2 examples at the start of the presentation spoke to, I talked about Havelock North where 5,000 people got sick because a council-operated supply failed, as opposed to that camping ground where terrible shouldn't have happened, but it was a small number of people got sick because they don't supply as many people. So basically what I'm saying is, because of the proportionate response, we're a bit tougher on councils at this stage than we are on smaller suppliers because the risk to the country and to the population is so much greater. Now the good news is generally council supplies sit down in the voluntary space down there. We have, you know, dealings with your staff, very limited. You know, we monitor, we give feedback if needed. Look, it's all pretty smooth running. As we move up that triangle, though, you can see that we wind up having to get a bit more forceful. We can assist if things are going wrong. We start directing things if things aren't happening, and right up the very top, we can get into an enforced space. That's where we had to go to with Kaio last year. You might be familiar with the private scheme up there that failed, and we had to say to the Far North District Council, look, that's fallen over, you need to take it over. Probably not such an issue for Invercargill. You won't have a great number of private schemes there, but it's something all councillors should be aware of, is that, hey, if a private scheme fails, probably the first cab off the rank to look after it is the neighbouring council or the council that it's in. You don't want a new failed scheme on your books. Just other things that we have going on, we've got a community supplies team which will help small suppliers in your area if you have any. Encourage them to get in touch with these guys. This is our Dunedin-based operations team. Rachel East was hoping to be in this conversation, but quite often we find with the ops teams, things happen, things come up, and they don't make it, which means if your questions are too difficult, I may have to pass them on and come back to you later. Drinking water quality assurance rules, your staff are all over these. They're the rule book on how to run a centralised supply. And if you're not running a centralised supply, if you have a small country supply, which again won't be a big issue for Invercargill, we updated the acceptable solutions, which is a way of dealing with water in-house rather than having a centralised supply. They use filtration and UV to clarify and cleanse the water at the household. If you want to know more about that, I could talk about them all day. Get in touch with me. This is probably more pertinent and of interest. The discharge to the wastewater discharge national standards, they were brought in December the 19th last year, and you may be familiar. If you're new councillor, you may not. Basically, up until the December the 19th, there was as many different rules for discharge of water, wastewater across the country as there were regional or unitary councils, so 16 or so, because everybody did it differently. When I was Mayor of Central Otago, I had a different set of rules to look after than you guys did in Environment Southlands, Rocky. So really, this was a bit of a ridiculous situation. And we also had a situation in the country where 20% of our wastewater treatment plants that discharge to water are running on an expired consent. And at the moment, well, before this law was brought in, you could run on an expired consent basically ad infinitum, and some of them were doing it for 10 years. Also, another 40% of plants are going to run out in the next 10 years. So a good time to bring in national standards. They work on the premise that the receiving body is what dictates the standards. So if you have an open ocean discharge, then you're going to be able to have basically a lower level of treatment because the environment can handle it better than if you were dealing into an estuary or a lake or so forth. So how it will work is, or how it does work now, is if you want to reconsent a plant, you as the TA have the conversation with iwi and with your community and go, right, what are we going to do? Are we going to discharge to land or are we going to discharge to water? You make the decision which one you're going to do. After doing that, you then go to the regional council, and so long as you can reach the standards with whatever treatment you are putting in place, then they can't increase those standards. Also, the plant will be consented for 35 years. Same thing applies to discharge to land. Looking at the different types of land and the way that the contaminants will react with the land will dictate what can and can't be done in various areas if you choose to go to a land standard. We're almost on to question time, folks. Other roles, emergency management. Yep, we have a role in that. We're doing national engineering design standards at the moment. People are working on it outside my room as we speak. This is going to be so that we get to a point where all the infrastructure under the ground for water in New Zealand, as people do subdivisions, will be the same instead of the hodgepodge that it is at the moment. If get some standardisation, we should get some cost savings, and we have a role in stormwater. Last slide before questions. These two reports on the left are particularly important to elected members, I believe. They come out about the middle of every year and they tell you where you sit compared to other councils or other water organisations as they come online across the country. A really handy tool for governors so that you're able to then say to your staff, if need be, why is it that we're going really well here, but we're sort of down in the bottom quarter here? And as I say that, for the number of ratings that we have at the moment, well, you are in one of the lower quarter, but that's about spending, not in terms of how you're doing. So, really useful reports. I suggest you have a look at them. And the compliance monitoring and enforcement strategy is what I've been talking about for the last 15 minutes or so. So, look, Mayor Tom, I would love it if you would guide us from here with questions from your team. And I'll do my best to answer them, but if I can't, I'll undertake to get back to you with the right answers, given I'm not a water specialist, I'm an engagement specialist.
Thank you, Tim. We are pushed for time, but I'll allow 3 questions, actually. Yes, Councillor Pottinger.
Thank you, Mayor. Tim, my question is, what's Te Mara ROI's view on using drinking water for mass medication, as in fluoride? Or,
right. Yes,
or,
I can tell you.
COVID vaccine delivery, maybe in the future, yeah.
Wow, that would be good because I hate needles. Look, fluoridation falls totally under the gambit of the Ministry of Health. We have absolutely nothing to do with it. So our views are relevant.
So, I mean, but you are a water controller, so you sit there neutral on something that a lot of people, I just reading that 90% of Europe is totally anti-fluoride in water, and they have their reasons. So why do you allow it here?
because it's not in our jurisdiction. So our viewpoint is irrelevant. It doesn't come under our Act. It comes under the Ministry of Health's jurisdiction. Nothing to do with us.
Okay, thank you. There are no other questions, Tim, so thank you very much for actually, I will ask you one. The
Yes.
requirement for resilience in terms of drinking water, would that extend to, as I'm sure you know, where we have a very good system, we only have one supply. So something catastrophic happens, then we have no supply. Would that be considered to be not be resilient?
It's a really good question and probably just above my level. I mean, when it comes down to something catastrophic, so if you have a, oh gosh, you know, any number of things that can happen. You say your plant breaks down. Given I'm living in Wellington, that's probably a great example, even though it's you're talking drinking water. If your plant was to completely fail, then there's going to be a sufficiency of supply. There's going to be a whole alternate means of dealing with that. The situation that we're looking at when I was talking about resilience to disruptions is more where, particularly in rural councils, we can have councils which have boil water notices that have been in place for a number of years, or that are regularly occurring several weeks out of the year. You're going to be on a boil water notice. It's more that ongoing not being resilient and providing quality water, as opposed to a one-off catastrophic event that we're looking at. That would be dealt with down a different pathway.
Thank you. Okay, look, thank you very much, Tim. Please feel free, whenever you think it's appropriate, please feel free to come back and talk to us again.
Absolute pleasure, Mayor Tom, and thank you to Michael for setting it up, and great to see the other Michael there, and all the best to your councillors and yourself. It's going to be a very interesting term. Thank you.
Cheers.
Sure will be. It's already interesting.
Okay, councillors, that takes us to tab 16, which is the fees and charges schedule for consultation. This is a very, very weighty paper, if I can put it like that, with many, many pages, but obviously, Rhiannon, we have to assume that councillors have read these, so, you know, please bring it to attention, anything you think it's appropriate to particularly bring it to attention.
Thank you, Mayor. So, if it's okay, I will start with just making some corrections, and Michelle has some text that we can pop in. So these are in the regulatory space. Some errors in the calculations on a number of the regulatory fees have come to light since the agenda was published. So I would just like to note those changes, and the fees and charges schedule will be updated. And further to that,
anything material there?
Not particularly material. You'll see the specific numbers pop up on the screen in a moment. I would just also like to note, while Michelle is doing that, that we would like to delete the last resolution to adopt that change to the dog control policy. I'll just speak briefly to that matter. Essentially, it relates to a legislative complexity within the Dog Control Act, which means that while it is legally required that a dangerous dog must be desexed, there is the potential for a small window, because people have 1 month to do that, that if that coincides with registration time, there may be a requirement to register a non-desexed dog. So it is a very minor technical point. It means the change that was put in the policy, while practically correct, is just not required, and we do need to implement those 2 new fee levels. They will be used extremely rarely, but we just need to make that update. So perhaps I'll pause there if there are any questions on those items, and then I can touch briefly on a couple of other major points.
So when you say those items, you're talking about specifically the dog control and the fees?
And those fee changes,
fees.
Yes.
Yes, Councillor Boyle.
On page 3 of your report, on page 105 of board books, you talk about application for working dogs that's been proposed. I'm just wondering, how is that done? Is it per dog, and is it once, or how will that work?
Do you want us to take that question now?
Well, we're talking about dogs, so fair enough.
Through you, Mayor, I'll hopefully try and provide some clarification on that. I would assume that it would be on a case-by-case basis with the number of dogs on site. I do know that we have instances where a dog owner will claim that their dog is a working dog, however the circumstances in which it is housed and the type of dog don't necessarily align with the requirements of a working dog. So our ACOs would go out and actually see that dog working to determine that it does actually qualify as a working dog.
So my question was, so if there are 5 working dogs and there's an application for those, is it the same fee or is it 5 times?
The fee, I think, is... What does it say? Oh. The description here is an hourly rate, so I would assume that that would be an hourly rate and they would see all those dogs in that situation.
Councillor Bond.
I was just supplementary to Councillor Boyle's question. I just wondered at like the working dog's definition. Are we talking about like farm dogs, companion dogs, police dogs? But what defines a working dog? So it's farm dog, police dog, companion dogs, blind dogs.
The working dog would be defined under the Dog Control Act.
Yeah, mine probably falls under the dog control scenario as well. I had a resident not too long ago reach out to me and they'd looked into our fees and charges because their neighbour has 7 large huskies in a quarter-acre section and had looked into it, and that we have the fees and charges there for 5 responsible dogs or more, and they're responsible dogs, they're huskies, but they're living, there's a lot of them, they're quite loud and they're howling in a very small confined space. So perhaps that's something that we need to look at, how many...
I think your point's well made, but I don't think it fits
No,
in
it
the
doesn't
fees and
necessarily
charges.
fit here, but it's just a point, I guess. Is there a limit on how many dogs a person can own in town?
Separate matter, you don't need to respond to it. Okay then, I think you keep going, Rhiannon.
So I'll just touch briefly on some general high-level points in relation to the fees and charges, and then Adina is going to speak to a few specific items within the different activity areas. So obviously, councillors, you're aware that over the last 5 years now, we have been working each year to bring the fees and charges into greater alignment with the revenue and finance policy in terms of finding that balance between the funding for activities that's coming from other sources and that is coming from fees and charges. So we continue the work this year. I will note the further point that we've included within this change to the fees and charges more accurate allocation of overheads to each activity. So overheads is back office costs that are required for the delivery of the activity, things like finance, communications, health and safety, that kind of thing. This was scheduled anyway for next year alongside the transition to the water. We have brought that forward, so you will see some of those costs reflected, and that's the reason for the range in the average baseline cost. So normally you would see that as one figure that is applied across everything. That is the reason for the range, because some areas already have overheads allocated. I'll then just speak to the matter that for the first time you are receiving 2 schedules. You're receiving the water fees schedule and the fee schedule for everything else. So the Water Committee has received and reviewed the water supply, stormwater and sewage fees, and they have also received the associated policy that we will consult on at the same time. So there is going to be a balance, as there is every year, and as we discuss in detail, as you raise fees, Obviously, the market is to a more or less extent for each service demand responsive. So there is information in the report around the issues and risks around that. I will just note that we are already seeing demand response to those water fee increases that we have made over the last few years. So that will happen. The team have, to the best of our current knowledge, forecast those revenue implication changes. Every fee is charged a different amount of times. Some fees we charge lots and lots, and so they have a big revenue impact. Other fee might be used once a year, has very, very little impact on the revenue. That's the reason for, within the report, why the average increase in the fees themselves does not track directly to the increase in revenue fees. So on that note, I'll just pass to Adina to speak briefly about the major changes within the body of the report on the activities themselves.
Actually, before we go kind of line item by line item, maybe just in terms of the principle that you've just espoused and how we've gone about it, Rhiannon, I might take some questions on that, and I have one to start. If I go to page 2 in your report, in the second paragraph, where it talks about fees and charges revenue as 21% of operating funding, noting this will vary through the budget review. This is 1.96% increase in 2025. Does that mean in 2025 it was 19.04%?
Correct.
Right, so basically we have increased the user pays element of our revenue marginally.
Our forecast revenue, absolutely, yep.
Okay then, thank you. Are there any other questions on the concept before we go to the line by line? No, I don't see any, so yeah, please carry on.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just add to the animal services section. There was a couple of other changes, and I'll just talk through the significant ones. For the menacing dog fee, we're proposing to remove the existing fee and introduce a fee for DC.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you. Can you pull the microphone and speak towards it?
For menacing dog fee, we're proposing to remove the existing fee and replace it with a fee for desexed dogs by breed only. And the reason for this is that menacing dogs must be desexed, and owners are advised of this upon registration. Most of the animal services fees, the proposed increase for those is 5%, with the exception of a small number of fees to encourage the uptake of responsible dog ownership practices. And the other change, the last change, was the change to separate the multiple dog fees to reflect the responsible owner category and the working dog category. Would you like me to keep going, Your Worship, or do questions after each section?
What I think we'll do is, I think you carry on to the end, and then we'll take questions at the end about individual items.
Perfect. Yeah. For the cemeteries and crematorium, we're proposing to keep the burial and cremation fees as they were set for 2025-26. And the reason for this is that for 25-26, the fees have had a 15% increase, which was the highest in approximately 5 years. And that was to ensure that we are covering the cost shortfalls and inflation. The 6-month review of the revenue shows that we're on track, whereas in the previous year we were behind our revenue. And what it is proposed is that the fees are reviewed again as part of our long-term plan preparation. For elderly persons housing, with the exception of the new builds, which are proposed to increase by 5%, the other ranges of the rental ranges are to remain unchanged. However, the individual leases are proposed to be increased by 7% to bring them closer to that maximum range. And the reason for this gradual increase, rather than going all the way to the limit, is due to the age and condition of the properties, but also the financial limitations of our tenants. For library and archives, a number of changes are proposed, ranging from 10 to 15%. The most significant one there is likely around the meeting room use. So 25-26 was the first year that council has introduced a fee for the not-for-profit room hires, and we have increased the fee for the commercial hires, and feedback from the library staff from the community groups has indicated that our not-for-profit community groups are unhappy with those fees, and some have stopped booking the space because there are financial limitations. And this probably aligns with what we're seeing in the wider context around not-for-profits experiencing reduced funding, and then funders experiencing higher levels of application volumes. For our parks and recreation areas, again, a 10 to 15% increase is proposed. This will be the second one in a row, and it is likely that we are going to see an impact of these fees in terms of community engagement, sports clubs, affordability, and just the overall availability of community activities. However, this may take sort of 2 to 3 years to see the full effects. Bluff boat ramp fees, just a note on there, the Bluff boat ramp fees were implemented on 1 July 2025, and the focus to date has been on education, and the team has prepared a range of materials, both available online and around the site. And at the end of January, there were 81 annual permits that were issued. Noting that the fee increases there may lead to some users looking for alternative ways to launch their boats, and possibly have implications for council in terms of operations there. Also, with the Bluff boat ramp fees, there are 2 new fees that are proposed: one for the annual commercial permit, and one for club use, which is 60% of the standard annual permit. Passenger transport fees, we are proposing a 10 to 14% increase to the passenger transport fees. This follows a quite significant increase last financial year to these fees, and for the first 2 quarters we have seen a drop in those fees. We're looking at about 11% reduction. NZTA has indicated that given the drop in demand, while they were initially expecting to see higher fees, they will understand if council chooses to go ahead with smaller increases for the fees than originally directed. Splash Palace fees. So the fee increase proposed for Splash Palace are 10% or 11%, depending on the rounding there, and this follows another round of fee increases, particularly for adults, senior citizens, and students in 2025, 2026. For 25-26, council has agreed to decrease the child admission fee to aim to increase participation in that area, and what we're seeing to date is that participation is still decreasing in that demographic. However, it was never anticipated that would reverse quite this fast. With the pool's fees, it is important to know that further fee increases are likely to impact on participation, particularly given the current economic conditions, and we may see somewhere in the vicinity of 10 to 20% decrease in participation annually, which is roughly about 11,000 paid admissions or 39,000 facility participations a year. Splash Palace is a well-used community facility, and there's approximately 30 user groups and services that are supported or provided by the facility. And in order to remain affordable and accessible to all, the fees do need to be reflective of the community. And we've heard it before when Great South spoke about it. In Southland and in Invercargill City, the average household income is below the national average, and so is the disposable income as well. We have prepared, staff have prepared an analysis on 35 pools across New Zealand to show where the current fees are standing and what the average is and where the new proposed fees will be. And I think for the current fees, for the most part, they are relatively in line with the national average, but once the fees are increased, they're well above the that national average. And lastly, I'll just briefly speak to roading, particularly parking. So all of the parking fees are proposed to increase, and we have rounded them to ensure that it allows for cash payments, and clarification has been added that a minimum of 15-minute minimum purchase will be required, and there are no changes to the 30-minute free parking provision. However, what we're seeing with the off-street parking in particular is that while revenue is in line with what was last year, that does suggest that there has been a drop in demand for off-street parking. So as a result of that, we're proposing to keep the monthly off-street parking fees and the off-street daily parking charge the same as this financial year.
Okay, thank you. So I'll take questions on that paper, including the attachments. So questions, anyone? I don't see any. Yes, Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, the cremation fee increase of 15%, does that cover the full cost of LPG? Because I know LPG's gone up heaps. It's more than...
Yes, so when the fees were revised last year, that has been taken into consideration, the cost of LPG, yes.
Please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Are you able to advise what the actual occupancy rate required is for our buses to break even? We've just got electric buses. I feel that should have created some operational cost savings. Perhaps it hasn't, but it would be good to know. I find it really hard to think about raising the price and restricting users even further when we've just tried to make this as sustainable as possible.
So I'll speak briefly to that one, Chair. We are a long way from break even, a huge way. So we could certainly bring back the numbers that were provided at last year's annual plan when there was a review in depth of those bus fees in response to the NZTA policy requirement to increase the revenue from user fees amounts. But in terms of occupancy rate for break even, there's no city this size that can or achieves that occupancy rate. It is a requirement to subsidise the service to some extent or another.
From my recollection, it would be several 100%.
And I understand that, but I guess, we know that public transport is just not effective in our city. Well, I think it would be right for us to understand, and maybe this has been communicated to previous councils, do we need to have 5,000 people a week riding the bus, or do we need to have 20,000 people a week riding the bus? What is it that, like, if we want to look at behaviour change, we actually need to know the numbers as well? Yeah.
So through you, Chair, yes, Councillor, you're right. That information's been brought in detail to the previous council, and we can certainly bring it back again. But that was in response to that policy discussion around that change to that service. But I can confirm that price is only one of the factors. Essentially, we have within the city a lot of parking available, and so as a result, not much congestion. There isn't much driver of demand onto the buses. So that may well change in the current environment that we're in, but we certainly wouldn't have that information at this point. But price is only one part of the picture and not the major one when it comes to our bus service.
They are very heavily subsidised already, Councillor De Vries, and I think the I mean, I cannot remember the numbers, but I don't think they are particularly sensitive to the number of people using them. I think even if every bus was full, they would still be heavily subsidised, is my recollection. So in other words, your question is how many people need to use the buses before they become, break even in their own right?
Effective.
I don't think there actually is a number for that. I think it's, I'm trying to look at the table over there, but my recollection is it would be much higher than 100% if there was a... But I think it'd be useful to bring that paper back.
Yep.
The Lush.
So can you just explain to me what would be the point of putting the bus fares up if we put them up and the patronage decreased by 50 to 60%? I mean, the fact is that we are now free to run or cheaper to run with batteries, and we've got a time probably with, we've probably got a lifetime chance to get people into our new buses because of the cost of fuel. This is the sweet spot, this is the golden opportunity. Surely the thing now would be to be lowering the price of transport to get more people on it, to get so we could get the numbers right up and it could become closer to be sustainable. Otherwise, it looks to me like we've got no commitment to the buses. We're trying to run them into the ground. If there's the correlation between the higher prices and the number of people catching them, I mean, I'm really worried about this.
Thank you, Councillor. So absolutely good question, and the paper is kind of speaking to these challenges. I think a couple of points come into play, and that is the national direction to seek more from user fees, which is an NZTA national position. But as my colleague suggested, they have said that if we go slower towards the targets that they've set for us, that they understand that. I think the second point that I'll make is that this is adopting the fees and charges schedule for consultation. And so I would certainly believe that we will receive feedback on this item, and that will be something that you can all consider in the final adoption of the position when we get to June. And finally, obviously, the challenge is for all services across the business. We have been directed by Council to seek the appropriate amount from user fees, and that is why corporate overheads are being applied across the whole of the business suite. So as it is every year, fees and charges is a delicate balancing act. We will likely need to make some changes as we come into June, and we'll bring forward that information for you to consider.
I think it's interesting, as we move towards June, the situation in the world will hopefully become clearer by that time, and the actual usage of the buses might well change through that period as a consequence of what happened in the rest of the country already. I don't know if it's happening here yet, but certainly in the rest of the country we're seeing a significant increase in bus usage, which might well feed in then to an assessment that would be made in June. It's a very delicate balance between on the one hand, wishing to keep fees and charges down, and on the other hand, recognising that if the user does not pay, the ratepayer pays. So, my generic old lady in South City who can't afford to buy a pint of milk is going to be subsidising somebody catching a bus if you transfer it to rates. And that's the judgment, that we make whenever we look at fees and charges. Somebody's got to pay. So if the person that uses it does not pay, it just means it falls on everybody else. But you're right, I mean, it will come back in June, and I think it would be useful at that point to actually have a look. Well, we will definitely then have a look at, the data from that period. Have we seen increased usage or not? Anyway, we have...
Just a really quick question. Is there any rationale for why the health licence for hairdressers fees charge has been removed?
Through you, Chair, that's a legislative change at a national level, means that we no longer need to undertake that activity.
Thank you, Worship. I've just got a wee clarification question, really. Page 7, under elderly persons housing. If I'm understanding this right, the new builds, one-bedroom units will be increased by 5%. I'm interested in it says in the next area, it is proposed that all individual leases are increased by 7%. What does that look like? For individual leases? Are we talking about one person in one unit?
So through you, Chair, there are a number of different setups of the units. Most of them are one bedroom and or studios. The advertised fees are the maximum levels, and there are still a large number of units that are sitting well below those levels. So hence the individual items agreements increases which are proposed, and every householder would receive a letter around that in order that they can provide their feedback.
Thank you. So on page 17, under the explanation, so our single units for one person are currently 50% under the market value of rental being charged, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Regarding the cemeteries, I'm just trying to get some rationale or further rationale around why we're holding the price for, I think, was it the burial plots. You've indicated that it had a high spike last year, but isn't that because we're not gradually increasing, that then we force a high spike every few years? Should we not be looking at a gradual increase every year? And also, just given that this is a finite resource, that we've got to look at managing that.
So following, through you, Chair, following last year's review of the fees, it was deemed that the prices are still appropriate and they still cover the overheads associated with those, hence why the proposal is to maintain those fees for the upcoming financial year. And if Mr. Capel would like to add anything.
No, it's fine.
Yep.
Yes, that was my,
There are another questions. So we have the recommendations on the board, which are a little bit different than the recommendations on board books. Do we need to take these individually, or will somebody, I don't know that we do actually, will somebody move that we receive, note, adopt the fees and charges for consultation? So we are not actually approving the fees and charges, we're adopting them to go out for consultation, and adopt the stormwater, the water supply, stormwater and sewage fees and charges, and delegate to the Community and Regulatory Committee the responsibility, duty and power to deliberate in animal services fees and charges. Did you just move all of those? Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Bond. Is there any other discussion? In which case, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Takes us through to the long-term plan park strategy, capital and revenue planning. Oh, it's you again, Rhiannon.
So this paper is in follow-up to the first long-term planning workshop of the year, which focused on the future direction for parks. So my paper notes that we will bring forward the capital items for you all to consider following the completion of the remaining capital workshops. This paper is really providing an overarching summary of the strategic work that the teams have been focused on. It notes the next stages in planning for some of those pieces, and it specifically gives you the opportunity to provide direction to the team in terms of operational expenditure items, which Council may wish to consider for a level of service changes. So I'll just touch on those briefly. So they relate to items that were raised during the workshop in terms of level of service around entry points to the city, higher level of service for flower planting in some particular locations, which it was requested that the team make suggestions on, the issue around the service for Stead Street Stop Bank and the maintenance of that area, and also level of service changes around already Sands, which was also raised by councillors in the meeting. And then finally, I'll just note that revenue was also discussed in relation to land disposals particularly, and the paper notes the proposed forecasting changes that are likely to be required, and the fact that the Donovan Park matter can be brought back to the table. So I'm happy to take any questions.
So all of these are for noting, with the exception that we are asked whether we wish for staff to go and do some work to come back and tell us, look, if you want these things, this is what it will cost. Can staff maybe quantify how much work is involved in that? I mean, I don't want to send you away and do 2 years personal work or something like that just because we've casually asked the question. But, I mean, is it a manageable thing? Because these are all things that we said, gosh, it'd be good if we could do these. Sure, I'm looking at
So I can speak to my knowledge. There is some work involved because obviously there needs to be some financial forecasting done, but it is not a huge piece of work, is my understanding, for these items.
That's correct.
So I'll take questions. There are none. The question is whether all of those things that are under item 7 agree or disagree. I'll put separately whether we agree or disagree, but there may be within that list items that we think are more important than others. So I'll start a little bit of discussion on that. What was the question about the Sandy Point Domain Reserve? What's the thought there?
So through you, Chair, I can speak to that. That came up during the workshop around the maintenance of that area and just in terms of mowing and the condition on that area came up specifically. So it's an operational
I don't know if any other councillor wants to speak to. I mean, I go to that area almost every day, and it seems to me to be well maintained. I don't know, and it's a very, very large area. So any decision that you took with respect to maintaining it to a higher standard would have a significant cost impact, I would have thought, because it's so large. But somebody who raised that, Councillor Bond, was it you that raised that during the...
Yes, it was, Your Worship. Given that we've had some public forum visits from Oreti Sands working group that's been out there prior to Christmas, on their Facebook page with thousands of followers, I discovered that they were maintaining that area themselves with volunteers. They were hiring equipment to go in, and I wasn't sure if council was fully aware of that we've got our own members of our public taking care of our reserve in our area, and I was concerned about that. Subsequently, when the visits to us in the public forum have happened, they've asked for more formal relationships with our parks and reserves, and that there be a formation of a plan to keep that area maintained for safety for people walking their dogs and running.
So the question was whether we are actually maintaining it or whether members of the public are maintaining it and we don't know about it. I mean, if maintaining means cutting the grass is actually sold, isn't it? Yeah, it's not a matter of just cut. So it's an interesting question. So do we know whether that is actually happening?
What are you asking? What's happening?
So the question is, so Councillor Boyne pointed out that a Facebook post, I think it was, claimed that the public were going in and maintaining that area, the old golf course.
So I'm a member of that group as well, as a public member, follower of that group. And the park staff have a relationship with that group and will continue to work with that group to resolve the issue appropriately. So the group have asked that they be allowed to, as I understand it, have people come in and cut for baleage some of that area, and have had that approved, I think, in the past. And it's a matter of for the parties to continue to work with staff and staff to continue to work with the parties to allow the best possible outcome for that particular piece of reserve. I am loath to I suppose, develop a work program based on Facebook posts. I think the relationship is the critical thing that we are trying to build and work with on that particular part of the reserve.
So that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, thank you. I was just getting clarification about exactly what it was we were checking in on.
So, Councillor Bond, could I just, if you did actually raise that, it seems to me a bit as long as a piece of string, that one. What specific work would you like to see undertaken?
From the public forum that the group came to, it was to establish a more open, transparent relationship with our parks team, where they could identify, and as they have been doing since then, what were areas of concern for bushes that were a problem to the area. So the reason why I asked that question in there was to basically follow up on the fact that this is happening and that the area is being maintained.
Through you, Your Worship, if I can just respond to Councillor Bond to provide some assurance, hopefully. I've also met with the individual who is the administrator, I think, of that Facebook page. I've also had a walk around the area with that individual and have been out a couple of times subsequent with other members of the public as well. So the relationship is building. There is quite a bit of history, I think, that we continue just to work through. And I think we have to be careful in the sense that in assessing responses on social media sites like that, there are as many in favour that I see of what is happening to those that aren't in favour of what is happening. So it's just trying to maintain that balance is probably the critical thing from a resourcing perspective. But we're certainly cognizant of the need to keep that relationship being developed.
I think that's a good point.
So that's a different piece of work, which you say is already underway, and it might be, Councillor Bond, that you're comfortable with that. The question that we're asked, actually, the way it's worded in the paper, it says, agree or disagree to request operational expenditure options for the following items. And item D is Sandy Point Domain Reserve. It doesn't actually specify what the additional work would be. So I'm inclined, I prefer to take that one out, because I think actually what's been asked for is to improve that relationship. If we ask a broad question about what will it cost to improve the standard of that area, given we're talking about, I don't know, 100 hectares or something, it's a big question and I'm not quite sure where we'd stop. So would you be comfortable, Councillor, to leave as the response that Mr Cable have given?
I think that what Mr Cable has verbalised back to us is very fitting, and the reason why I brought that up initially was about those concerns that were going on out there. It wasn't my intention to put this through an operational costing to come back to us. It was merely a question I asked at the time at the workshop about how that ongoing relationship was going and how the grounds were being maintained.
So the other ones are, A, do a better job of some of the roundabouts, which I think we've had a lot of feedback on. Second, whether that might be possible to do some flower planting in the centre of the city, and what will it cost to do that? And the third one is specifically about State Street Stop Bank. And so I think as far as those, we'll take that separately when the time comes. Agree or disagree. I'll move that we agree those A, B and C when the time comes. So we turn back then to the recommendations, and I'll take all but
It'd be useful, Mayor Campbell, if I moved 1 to 6 as a block.
Yep. If you move 1 to 6. Yeah, that's what I was trying to head towards. Okay, seconded by Councillor Boyle. Is there any other discussion of those? Those in favour say aye. Aye. Against. Carried. So let's take number 7 on its own, and I would move that we agree those with the exception of D in terms of seeking operational expenditure. So I will move that we agree A, B and C. Will somebody second those? Thank you, Councillor Demery. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank
Handle
you.
the last three are simply notes. I'm happy to move 8, 9 and 10.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dermody. Any other discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. And that concludes the paper. Thank you. Takes us to the annual plan update, which again is in your name, Rhiannon. You're looking pretty lonely up there.
Michael's ready to answer any complex financial questions. So,
Anyway, annual plan update.
thank you, Mayor. So first of all, I just beg everyone's patience. This paper might be a bit complex as we go through. You'll see in the paper, as you've got it in your board books, that since the time of the workshop, as always happens around this time of the year, there have been further changes, and those are included in the paper. So I will just note those now and what those changes were and why those have brought the forecast rates position above the 7%. So the first of those was the decision made at a recent council meeting around the revenue for one of the parks and reserves areas in terms of the Southland Car Club. That has a 0.03% rates impact if it is funded in line with the normal process with the revenue and finance policy, but there is also the option to consider debt funding for that item. The second item is the NZTA has come out to councils with additional funding that is available for pothole remediation work. So this has only just arrived. It is on the funding assistance rate for NZTA work, which means that council needs to fund just under 50% co-funding if that funding from NZTA is to be picked up. Almost all of the roading program is FAR funded, so there isn't a lot of easy options to swap one thing out and bring another one in without having the same issue around co-funding requirements. I think the advice from the team, which was sought ahead of this meeting, is that the reason we don't have more of this work within our programme is that while potholes are always an issue in any city, we are lucky within this area to have, in comparison to some others, a higher kind of a smoother road surface area. That doesn't mean there isn't work that could be done, but perhaps the national policy direction which is underpinning that NZTA is for your consideration today how important that work is vis-a-vis adding the co-funding. So have prepared some wording for the governance team. Michelle has that for a lower level of co-funding if you wish to take up some of the funding. The other matter that obviously has changed as a result.
So let's stick to that because it's a quite significant issue. So my understanding is there's an opportunity to do a level of work that would be co-funded by government. Almost all of the work that we're doing next year in roading is also co-funded by government, and therefore it's not a matter of shifting priorities to make sure that we get that. It's actually you've got to do more. And I know that there's been some discussion about whether doing more has got kind of practical limitations as well as just financial limitations. And I know that there was some discussion about an appropriate level might be 50% of the sum that's mentioned in the paper being expended. That's actually what you're talking about, isn't it?
That's correct, Your Worship. There is the delivery factor to consider as well. There are, as we know, challenges within our capital delivery. So the team is certainly more confident of being able to deliver a lower number, and that combined with the lower risk factor we have around road smoothness is just there to inform your decision making on the extent to which you pick up that entire amount of funding or a lower level.
I interrupted you, Rhiannon, keep going.
So I will then take the opportunity to note the further change from the meeting today in terms of the indication that Awarua have given in terms of their mana whenua rep, at least for the immediate term. So I would like to add a recommendation for a reduction for 1 year around that amount. And again, we have the wording available to go in there, so that has come since this report has been tabled. I'll just pause for a moment to allow that to be added. So those are the changes since the workshop. Everything else within the paper we went through in detail. There are a lot of significant kind of movements within the budget, obviously some of it relating to the complexity of the water transition. We will note a high level of uncertainty this annual plan due to the regulatory environment, and now within the last week or so, the economic environment as well. So just recognising that this is a point in time. You are not adopting for consultation because we are still in line with where the long-term plan was putting us. This rate increase is below that amount, but it is important and we are required to provide an update to the community. So I'm happy to take any questions on the paper, and then I also have further items that Council might wish to consider in mitigation, which we can also discuss.
Why don't we take those now, Rhiannon, and we can come back and do the whole thing. So take your other items in mitigation first.
So I have 2 more items that Council could consider in order to bring that forecast rates increase further down. So those are, first of all, I'm just waiting for Michelle to pop those up on the screen. Those are, first of all, a reduction for 1 year further to the Community Wellbeing Fund, which could be considered to extend, and an amount has been added which is still higher than the funding that was available last year, and that in combination with a reduced level of pothole funding and the next item would assist in bringing the rates down.
So let's deal with that one then, deal with those as we go. And Steve, I know that you've already been, as the chair of that committee, already been consulted on this. You want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm well aware of our need to look at rates and rates affordability throughout this process, and I'm very aware of the pressures that are facing our community, particularly through our last subcommittee round and funding allocations. So with that, I know it's been at 565. I wonder whether we come up from 465 by $35,000 to a nice round $500,000 and meet somewhere close to the middle. But that's just a proposal.
Thank you. And Rhiannon, I think that's what you're assuming, isn't it? I'm not assuming, but that's what you've included as one of your assumptions, Aaron.
That's you're correct, Mayor.
Yeah.
That's what we've got in the draft recommendation, which Michelle's just added. And then the other item, if you'd like me to speak to that now, is regarding the Wagner Place toilets operations. So, Council, you will recall that the previous annual plan, we consulted on closing that facility, and then ultimately Council determined that until a shower option could be made available, the facility would stay open. So we're bringing forward some options to renegotiate that operation. At the moment, a further year is within the budget position. Further negotiation, perhaps on reduction in opening hours, has the opportunity to bring that cost down between 80 to 140,000, which has a significant rates impact for the year ahead. We haven't included specific details because it is subject to contract negotiation. It is run by an external party, but we will be able to update further on that over the next few months ahead of the annual plan being
But we can make an
adopted.
assumption that the lower end of that, for the sake of, for the sake of the day. So if you say between 80 and 140, and we assume 80, then we're being safe, aren't we?
yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think to assume the whole amount for the whole year, when I think council's will is to reduce the number of hours, often expressed will is to reduce the number of hours, then it would seem to me that unless it's breaking some fundamental rule, that we ought to take some.
Sorry, through your worship, I was going to wait until you're finished.
No, I caught your eye.
Thank you. I think it's probably important to point out to the council in relation to the position, if you want to do all of the pothole repairs, it's about 175 additional on top. So if you were to reduce them to the down to only half, the gap would be 145. I'm giving you numbers because it's easier to work through than percentages. That 145, if you have 3 items that you were talking about in options of reduction. One we've already taken, which is in relation to the mana whenua representation. The other one is if you reduce potholes down to half, that's about 80,000 itself. And you've got the community wellbeing, which is 45. Your decision really is 65. Sorry, is really trading off whether you want to do the pothole repairs or the full potholes, or half the potholes, or do anything in relation to the toilet contract negotiations. So that was the change we made. We were trying to work through in the break in relation to the decision that's been made today around mana whenua representation and changing the position. It really does come down to whether you want to do full pothole, take the opportunity of full pothole repairs or not, and send us back to the table in relation to the contracts. The other advice I'd give is we're only at the end of March. We've still got 3 months to go. You might want to consider actually saying enter into negotiations up to a value of 80,000 or 140, whichever you decide, in relation to the contract savings. From perspective, is it the right thing to do or not, is the question, not really whether we need to get those savings from those perspective, because we'll still need to work through the next 3 months, and there could be ups and downs on both sides.
So I'm not sure quite where that landed with the Walker Place. I mean, for me, the point about Walker Place is that council on a number of occasions in the last couple of years have asked for a report showing savings from reduced hours. We have in this report asked an assumption, or a proposed assumption, that the toilets remain open for the whole year. I don't think that's council's will to do that. So the question is, what level of saving can we assume? It says it might be that we can save anywhere between 80 and 140. It'd be great if you saved 140, but I would have thought a safe estimate would have been to assume the lower number. Would seem to me to be a safe estimate. So, I mean, I think there are 4 things that we've talked about: the half potholes, the wellbeing fund, the Walker Place toilets, and the automatic saving in the Ranaka savings. Do you want, Rhiannon? I mean, I think we've been gone for 2.25 hours. I want to take a break anyway. Do you think you could calculate in that break the implication of that for the number that we'd agree today?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to take let's take a 5-minute break, comfort break, mainly for my comfort. Thank you.
We are now live with the resume. Your worship, apologies.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So, welcome back, everybody. We've just had a short break. We were at the stage of opening it for questions. So, are there any questions, Councillor Pottinger?
Yeah, look, it's regarding the item, the comment on the Bluff discharge consent. It mentions $6.5 million moved out into later years. I mean, it says no rates impact, but this has blindsided me a wee bit because back in December 2024, Council resolved to go with the status quo consent, and all of a sudden there's 6.5 million appears here in a budget form. I mean, the other option back in December 24 was that we go ahead and do the 7.7 million complete renewal, but that was defeated. So what's the 6.5 about?
So through you, Chair.
Yep.
Through you, Chair. I can speak to that. It's a great question. Essentially, all this is saying is that this is going to be discussed during the long-term plan, and simply moving that funding out. Following that decision, there was no budget change because it would have come through this annual plan. So we're simply saying we're moving it out for you guys to discuss it at the long-term plan stage.
But as far as I'm concerned, there is no budget. There was no budget. I've looked back on the resolution passed in 2024, and it was to be done on the status quo. Now, all of a sudden, 6.5 million appears. Where did that 6.5 million come from?
Through yourself, Your Worship, the initial budget that was sitting in there has remained unchanged from the council decisions. We're waiting to go back to the Water Committee to actually have a discussion in relation to the forward program based on the consenting plans. That will be part of going through the Water Committee, feeding into our long-term plan process. So that has yet to commence in relation to those final discussions. We've begun initials, but it's through the Water Committee initially, then back into our LTP process. The budget that was put in the LTP, which was not adjusted by Council at the time of those decisions, it is the budget that's been pushed out in these plans. So there's no increase or decrease in relation to the options that were put forward. It is what was originally in there.
It just doesn't line up with the resolutions back in 24, that's all.
Through yourself, Your Worship, it's just the timing in relation to it. There was additional budgets in other years. So you're surprised, Councillor Pottinger, is that there's money there at all?
Yeah, there was no indication.
So the paper says that the money has been pushed out. Your surprise is that there was money in the budget because it was already extinguished, or you thought it was already extinguished by...
It wasn't even mentioned. It wasn't mentioned back in 2024.
Okay. But anyway, the money...
It suddenly appeared.
So it turns out the money was sitting there in the budget and it's now been pushed out a year. But I think I take your point. Okay, other questions? Anybody? No, in which case can we... Yes, Councillor De Vries.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I just get clarification on the installation of water meters, and is that for residential properties or another water metering service? I'm referring to page 5 of the paper.
Through South Chair, I'll answer that. So both, Councillor. So we obviously undertake a renewals regime for commercial suppliers on our potable network, on our water network. So they are metered. So we have an ongoing requirement for upkeep in that space, and there's also provision and signalling through there around residential consumers and also distribution metering to understand where flows are going across our network in the city and in Bluff.
But in terms of water meters, as the average householder would understand it, my understanding is that we have no project to install water meters on people's properties. Is that correct?
No, we do have a water metering project that was advertised initially in the LTP. So,
Yeah, but for next year?
it is from 27, 28 onwards off the top of my head for a period of 3 consecutive financial years.
It's not in this coming year. And we have to reconsider it presumably when we come to talk about the long-term plan.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. So it was there as essentially a placeholder in the long-term plan that we would intend to do that. But it still has to be, well, it may be or it may not be revisited when we get into this long-term plan process. Is that correct? I'm just trying to follow the process.
That is correct.
Yeah, but there is no money in next year's budget to install domestic water meters, is there?
No, year after for a period of 5.
This is the question. Councillor Demery.
Just a point of clarification on that. The key words there are feasibility and investigation. So my understanding is that that money is set aside to do a feasibility understanding of what impact would water meters have on ratepayers or our community. So
it's a feasibility study. It's not actually.
It's not an actual.
Partly.
Partly that is, because it's written in there, yeah.
Questions? And if not, then we will consider the resolutions one at a time just to make sure that we've dealt with them properly. So I think 1 and 2 we can take together, can't we? Someone move.
Sorry, just a quick question, Mayor Tom. Is that forecast rate decreasing, or does that come up later on?
Where does it say? In the 1 and 2, number 1 and 2 doesn't. That's the forecast rate. It's what we had in the long-term plan.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's take 1 and 2. Will someone move 1 and 2? Thank you, Dan. And seconded by Councillor Crackett. Any other discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. So, number 3. What's interest rates? So we need to take. Okay, number 3's changed, doesn't it? So let's take them one at a time. We'll make it easy. Okay, 3A, inflation adjustment. Will somebody move that? Is correct. Thank you, Councillor Boyle. Seconded by Councillor Crackett. Any discussion? Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you. Interest rate assumption. And B, will someone move?
Yep.
Pardon?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Councillor Bond. Seconded by Councillor Boyle. Any discussion of that? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
So we now have in number C. And it's unchanged.
Can I make a suggestion?
Pardon?
Could I make a suggestion on C? If you leave it there, you can then put the mitigation in, which is further down in the resolutions.
Okay.
So taking that.
No, I'm not quite clear on that. Say that again. We're actually going to vote in favour of keeping it open. Then further down, we're going to vote in favour of reduced hours. Seems a bit counterintuitive.
You could delete it equally. It's just that it changes all the numbers for the totals in the report. But you're right. I would just delete C and deal with it later.
Okay, so take that out then. Take that out and we'll deal with it as one of the mitigations. So adjustments to D, adjustments to the water's transition costs, as shown there. Someone move that. Thank you, Councillor Demery.
Well, can I just ask for some clarification on D, E, or F and G? So just to make sure everyone's aware, so those changes are in relationship to the transitional costs associated with moving the water to a ring-fenced in-house separate entity. Is that correct? Michael.
Well, it's the adjustments to the water transition costs,
That's
so
right.
it's a variation from what was assumed
That's right.
in LTP, yeah.
That's correct, Michael.
Through yourself, Your Worship. Yes, that's correct.
Did you move it, Councillor? Seconded by Councillor Bond. Were you asking a question?
I know, I was seconding.
You were seconded. Okay. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Number E, adjustments to the water revenue. Will someone move that we approve that? Thank you, Councillor Boyle, seconded by Councillor Stewart. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. F, adjustments to the water capital. Move Councillor Dermody, seconded by Councillor Crackett. All those in favour say aye.
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 Against, carried. Adjustments to the water's depreciation. Move Councillor Dermody, seconded by Councillor Bond. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Move up the page. H, adjustments to non-waters operational expenditure. So has that now changed as a consequence of the mitigations?
No. No, those changes are outside those items that are detailed in the report.
Additional adjustments.
Do we need to change the wording of H? Seems.
Through yourself, Your Worship, the mitigations are after that particular line item, so that would be in sequence. H is before it, so the mitigations will happen after when you approve them.
Fair enough. So will someone move that? Thank you, Councillor Boyle, seconded by Councillor Ludlow. I think he moved his finger. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Addition of estimated storm response costs. So let's just make sure that we understand those. So that is that we are now building in a cost, non-insured cost of $4 million, but we are funding that by debt over a period of 5 years, isn't it, Michael?
Through yourself, Your Worship, that is correct.
5 years. So the impact on rates is not a $4 million impact, it's an impact to that, the spread over 5 years.
Yeah.
It's just over 1% impact, isn't it? So then we have, where did I get to? J, adjustments to non-waters cap.
No, I can move it.
Pardon?
I can move, Mr Mayor.
Okay, I beg your pardon. Somebody moved aye, so I think Councillor Bond, second by Councillor Broad. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. J, adjustments to non-waters capital expenditure. Will someone move that item? Thank you, Councillor Boyle, seconded by Councillor Lisa Tomic-Naughton, who moved at the... all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Adjustments to non-waters depreciation funding. Will someone move that item? Thank you, Councillor Bond, seconded Councillor Stewart. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Adjustments to non-waters revenue. Thank you, Councillor Boyle. I'm just trying to understand it first. Okay, so that includes the impact of the holding off of the, well, not holding off, the cancelling of the fee to Southland Car Club. There's a major, as the item there, it's not a major item, but it's an item there. So will someone move that? Thank you, Councillor Ludlow, seconded by Councillor Crackett. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Adjustments to external funding allocations. Okay, so will someone move those? Thank you, Councillor Demery, seconded Councillor Boyle. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Adjust the strategy for the utilisation of the ICHL additional dividend, which is now to pay down debt. Will someone move that? Thank you, Councillor Demery, seconded Councillor Stewart. All those in favour say aye.
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 Against, carried. adjustments to water rates in alignment to water services delivery plan. Will somebody move that? Thank you, Councillor Demery. Seconded by Councillor Boyle, I think. Took our glasses off at the appropriate moment. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. So then we have mitigations. The first one being that we no longer need to budget for the payment to the member from Abarua, which is an amount of $51,000 at a total 0.06%, total minus 0.06% total rate increase. Will someone move that? Thank you, Councillor Ludlow. Seconded, Councillor Stewart. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those against. Then we have the additional NZTA funding, and we are asked to agree or disagree to proceed with pothole remediation, or to proceed with 50% of that amount. So I'll take the second one first, since that was what we discussed before. Will someone move that we proceed with pothole remediation work at the 50% level? You move that. Thank you, Councillor Boyle. Second, Councillor Stewart. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Number 7, agree or disagree the following mitigation options. Renegotiation of the Walkner Place toilet operations, noting that if there were a significant reduction in opening hours, a saving of between $80,000 and $140,000 could be made. So are we given a ranges? What are we going to do? Are we going to move the lower end of the range? Is that the best way to proceed?
The lower end is the one in the total I gave earlier, the 0.09.
Never really quite caught that, Rhiannon. We're going to move the lower end.
I would move the 80,000 0.09.
Okay. So that then would read, there'd be an additional sentence, I think. Renegotiation of the Walkner Place toilet operations, noting that if there were a significant reduction in opening hour saving, a saving of $80,000 or greater could be made. Maybe we put it that way. And that then, Liza, are you moving that, Councillor Stewart?
I am. With that recommendation there, does it, the hours on the opening of the Walkner Place toilet, does that mean that it's closed in the weekend and it's open during
it would
the week?
open for 5 days
Yeah.
for... it would open 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's what it would mean. You moving? Is somebody seconding that? Nobody's seconded. Councillor Ludlow. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And the last one being to reduce the community wellbeing fund. It's actually an increase in the community wellbeing fund.
It was a one-year decision, so it was in the budget at 565.
Okay, so it's relative to what we assumed
Well, more than they had
last year.
last year.
Right.
Exactly.
More than they had last year.
I know, yeah. So
Right. So reduce the community wellbeing fund funding by, why don't we just say 65? Why is it up to 65,000?
65.
To 500. Reduce community funding to $500,000, because that's actually what the 0.07 comes from. Right. Right. So will someone move that? Thank you. You can see the little trickle of blood right there. Thank you for moving that. Seconded by Councillor De Vries. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Number 8. If we can move the page up a little bit.
Sorry.
Thank you. Note the proposed average rates increase, percentage total rates increase.
So through you, Chair, there's obviously too many rates increases in that wee sentence, and
Many
you
people
can
think
add
so.
6.93% to that total now. That is where that is now sitting. And I just will take this opportunity to note that obviously this is the average. Every householder receives a different forecast rates increase based on their individual property, the services they receive, and its valuation.
Right. And there is not a final number.
It's an interim number.
It's an interim number which could go up or could go down depending on what happens in the next few months, basically. Okay. Councillor De Vries.
Can I ask a question about that, Rhiannon? So what is kind of the most or the maximum number a person may see on their rates bill? Could it be upwards of 15, or is it relatively close to that rate that we've set?
Potentially it could be up, for example, if someone's significantly improved their property, or they've connected to a network and they're now receiving a service that they weren't before, or a number of other factors. So it's not possible to give an exact amount of what the lower and upper ranges would be.
And that's fine, thank you.
But if nothing else changes, if the house is the same as it was before, the increase could it be, I mean, that was the question I took from Councillor De Vries, actually. Not that whether they'd extended the house or something, but, you know, if it was the same house, could the range of increase go as high as 15%?
Through yourself, Your Worship, those that have done absolutely no changes to their houses, and it is potential that their rates increase could be slightly lower than 6.93, because all those that have done significant enhancements to their properties will take more of a share in relation to it. That's just the nature of how we calculate it, based on using the the capital valuation in relation to properties.
So the pie remains the same size, it's no matter how it's sliced. Where did I get to? Will someone move number 8, please? Thank you, Councillor Ludlow. Seconded, Councillor Broad. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried.
Yeah, Tom, the last three are simply noting. I'm happy to move the three of them together if you like.
Notes.
Second.
Notes, thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Sorry, say that again?
Number 7, I think the wording, because you didn't have the 2 in, it looks like by funding
Needs to be unstruck.
2, yeah, it just reads 500,000 reduced.
Just a community fund bill being funded
Yeah.
to $500,000.
Plotting. That's the
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So, is that it, or is there anything else?
That is it. That is all the recommendation.
I think I added one more at the bottom, didn't I, Michelle? Which was just to
Oh,
note
you
that
did.
obviously the report has attached financial statements. We will update those and they will be made available.
Okay, thank you. So that's for noting. I don't think we need to. Okay. Okay then, thank you very much. That was a long shift. Okay, it takes us to the Sister City update.
Thank you, Your Worship. That one is in my name. Very briefly, there is a budget in the coming year's financials for the Sister City relationships. And as such, we were requested to prepare a report to come through to Council with some options, noting that Suchen, our sister city in China, has invited us to visit them in either April or September of a year, because that's when they have a tourism and industrial fair. And Kumagaya, our sister city in Japan, has extended an invitation for us to visit in July next year. Noting that July next year, of course, is a separate financial year, but the bookings would need to be made within the coming financial year, should there be a decision to travel. I will say, Your Worship, there is no dire need for Council to make a decision on any travel at this meeting. If there is a decision to lay this on the table, that will not impact us in any great way, but it was simply that it was important that the council start considering what it wishes to do in relation to the sister city sphere for the coming year.
I mean, this is a matter that council have been, discussing amongst themselves, basically. And I think the mood is. Let me say what I think council's probably landed position is, but I'm happy for councillors to disagree with me. But I think the landed position is that council believe that we must visit Shushan, otherwise the relationship will fall away. That it would be appropriate to continue with the rotation of Kumagaya, and that therefore through the course of this term that we would visit both. However, particularly in the case of Kumagaya, it might be that is quite a small delegation, because the delegation to Shushan probably requires to be a bit larger, because of the breadth of work that's likely to be undertaken there. In terms of timing, Kumagaya have invited us for July 2027, and we would, I think the view is that we should accept that. Shushan have said either come April or October. To spread it, we would prefer to make that April 28, so that it's been done over a period of the 3 years rather than everything being squeezed into a 6-month period. So look, I think that is. Can any other councillor want to comment on that? We're not actually resolving this, I don't think, at this point. Yes, Councillor Ludlow.
It would be important for council to recognise the continuation of the sister city relationships, because they exist on different levels and in some senses achieve different outcomes. So Kumagaya, for example, is a relationship that has existed in a sister city format for 32 years. It's a long one, and certainly from the perspective of local secondary schools who are involved in regular exchanges, which affect not only outgoing students but students within the city who host, it has a significant impact on the lives of not only those students but their families. And there is economic trade between Invercargill and Kumagaya with baked goods and aluminium, but the size of the last delegation was a large one, and I agree with your suggestion that the next one could be a smaller one, and perhaps with a couple of specific focuses that we make them aware of before we go. These are some points that we'd like to discuss. Suqian is a city that has potentially larger economic benefits, and there are a couple of Chinese-owned companies within the city district. I'm not sure that it needs, again, a particularly large delegation there, but they will conduct very focused talks. And it has been some significant period of time since we've visited, so it is appropriate. We haven't visited, I think, since the gardens were opened. So I support the continuation of both those relationships and the visits, and I think splitting the timing is a good idea. But I think going with perhaps a more predetermined, defined focus for those visits might be useful. It's always an emotive topic because people call them, junkets, holidays, which, having been on a couple, I can assure you they're not. They're a privilege, yes, but they are certainly not a holiday. So supporting your stance essentially, Mayor Tom, that we continue with both those visits, but over the staged July 27, April 28 period.
Other discussion?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I agree with Councillor Ludlow about the Kumagaya one. It's proven, without a doubt, its value, both politically, with the schools, everything, trade. But the time I've been on council, I have seen no benefit at all from our sister city relationship with Suchen. And I think, you know, we've just been through the annual plan cuts and splices of money. I think we've actually got to own up, is this relationship beneficial or not, or are we just keeping it going because we don't want to offend someone? In my view, I see no benefit from it. And I said, Kumagaya, absolutely fine. That shows what a sister city relationship can turn into. So I will be not supporting any further.
Other discussion? Yes.
Yeah, look, the old Saki Express, I think it needs a rejig. I can see how bad this is perceived by the constituency. I always hear people going on about sister cities. The reality of it or not, and it's hard to tell, it's hard to quantify, but the voters perceive it as being something that's a treat for councillors. I think we would have much more goodwill in the community if we didn't do it. I think we could pass through some of the more unpopular moves if we weren't spending all this money for people to go overseas. I don't think it's our core business. I think probably if councillors went, they should pay their own money. I mean, I'd love to go. I mean, who wouldn't want to go to Japan for a couple of days or a couple of weeks? But my proposal would be that if councillors go, they pay their own way. And this might just have to be for a limited time while we're in a cost of living crisis. But at the moment, I think it's just the optics of it are just all wrong. I think it just looks like we're out of touch with our community, particularly when we are cutting showers and buses and things, or putting bus fares up and stuff like that. I think the optics is wrong. So yeah, councillors pay their way and see how that goes.
Yes, Sir Arnold.
Yeah, I have to agree with Councillor Lush on this one. I think that the relationship's a good one, but I think if in these tough times, it's not appropriate that we do go on the ratepayers' money ourselves. If we want to go, we pay ourselves. Or those that want to go pay for themselves. On that basis, I would support it. But other than that, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't want to put that motion today. That would be Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Worship. My thoughts on this is that certainly Invercargill has had a strong sister city relationship with Kumagaya, from high school level out into our business economic areas as well. My point is, and Councillor Ludlow touched on this, the last delegation numbers that went over was quite large. I was concerned about the fact that whilst partners pay for themselves to attend, it also puts an impact on the host hosting not only the councillors plus their partners, and made the my thoughts was that councillors' partners should not be on those trips. If they're there for business, councillors and business is what they should be focused on. So I'm somewhat stuck really. We are in a cost of living crisis. We are facing petrol crisis. Our people on the street can't afford a lot, and yet we've been seen to fly off on behalf of their ratepayer dollars and do something that they most from commentary don't see the direct benefit back to them, the ratepayers. They feel like they're digging in their pockets to give us a trip away. And I do respect the point that Councillor Lowe said that there are some business aspects and there would be better focus on outcomes for taking that trip to Kumagaya. So timing is always of the essence, and to keep that relationship going, I do fear that our Kumagaya people may take offence if we don't send a delegation over at their expressed request. I would support a trip in this training to Kumagaya. I do not think that it should be to the councillors' back pocket, because they are elected here, and if the focus is for more business and exchanges, then they should not be put into a position of being, well, no councillor should be put into a position of being, well, I have this salary tier and I can afford to go, and then another one facing a bit more of a financial problem. So I don't think that councillors should be paying for themselves to attend. In terms of our other, so Chen, I'm not of the position to support the sister-city relationship going forward.
Other comments? So, Alex, sorry, I beg your pardon. Councillor Crackett.
You go first. You were first.
This one's a wee bit of a tricky one for me because I know there's been a bit of discussion just now about the relationship between ourselves and Kumagaya from a bit more of a social aspect, because there is that direct, obvious benefit, I guess, of where we're exchanging people. So you get to see and you get to see, experience face to face what these people and the exchange of cultures and that kind of really soft benefit that we see with our education exchanges. But what we're not necessarily seeing, or what the general ratepayer wouldn't necessarily see, is the direct benefit that we get as a region from the sheer amount of trade that we do with our largest trading partner that comes from China. And to treat either one of those sister city relationships as though they are not as equally important, I think is almost borderline offensive, because we are an equal partner in the globe of what the economic globe of the world, So when it comes to sushi and Kumagaya, I think it is really important for us to both treat them with equal importance. It's been said today a couple of times, both in workshop and recently at this table this afternoon, that Southland is one of the only regions that's still performing and excelling in the escalation of our GDP. Why would we right now turn around and go, oh, sorry, we no longer want to do business with you? We understand that these cultures, they do require a level of ambassadorial type diplomacy to occur. And really, yes, you do have diplomacy that occurs from a national level, but how else does a lot of international business, and particularly in Sushi, might I add, our city of almost 60,000 people, is in a sister city relationship with a city of over 4.7 million people. So the sheer scale of our sister city on the other side is just astronomical in comparison to us. The economy that we have access to over there is significantly out of proportion to what we can actually provide them. So I think, to wrap up, I think it's really important for us to treat them both equally. I think trade is just as important as the soft skills or the soft opportunities, just equally as important. But I think when it's in front of your face, sometimes, and you don't have necessary access to the business, who might I add, are also employing our people, our communities, with their business in our inner city. I'll wrap it up at that. Thank you.
So De Vries.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, relationships actually take time and work in order to reap the benefits. It took me 15 years for me and my sister to get on. I also think that we have seen today the impact of what happens when we don't value relationships. And I, tread with caution. This should be something that we are good at. As a city, as a region, Invercargill shows so much monarchy to visitors. Why are we not extending that same? We're thinking about those we want to align with. So I understand that it's really hard to quantify the benefits of a sister city relationship in these types of trips to our community. But I guess I feel like it falls outside of a wider program, and that every few years we start to talk about visiting one of our sister cities or both, or inviting them over. But what actually happens outside of that, I don't know if that story is told really well about how we reap the benefits or how we connect our schools our education sector, our business sector into these different places. And for me, I think, I can't remember who said it, but it also needs to be part of, we need to go over there with a program of what we want to achieve. Our community does deserve to see what the benefits are that we can generate out of this. I support reducing the number of councillors going. I don't believe it needs to be everyone. I support it being part of a wider program of our business leaders, our other regional leaders, and I know that that does happen. I think it's really important that the right people are going over to this on this trip or these trips, not just who can or who's available. Who will make the most impact for our city and represent us with mana and dignity?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Campbell. Look, I think, and a lot of the sentiments Councillor De Vries's mentioned, I agree with. You know, we've got to ensure that we maintain these long-term relationships. I think maybe we have been a little bit remiss in terms of we haven't demonstrated to our community the value of them, and I think that's a challenge we should take up and make sure we have a well-targeted program that shows the benefit to the relationship and also to community. And I do support councillors making a contribution. I support your idea of phasing when we go, and equally, you know, a smaller, tighter delegation, maybe perhaps to Kumagaya where the relationship is stronger, but I think that's up for discussion around what is the appropriate amount of people to travel there and respecting their mana as much as growing airs. So yeah, I'm supportive of maintaining them, but we've got to demonstrate value to community and be real clear in our purpose.
So, I mean, I could either move that we leave this on the table, given the range of views, which are very, very wide around the table, or else I could move one of these, the one that I articulated initially, and see whether there's support for that. I'm inclined to do the latter. So I'm going to move at this point that we do travel to both sister cities, Sequan in April 2028 and Kumagaya in July 2027, without providing any other guidance at this stage, because I think that's as much as officers need actually at this point. So I'll move that. Are you seconding that, are you? Thank you. Is there any other discussion of that? Because I think we just need to test the will of the room. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay, so we'll go by show of hands. Okay, all those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that motion is carried. So just to be clear what we've just agreed, so we have agreed that we will send a delegation to Sushan in April 2028 and a delegation to Kumagaya in July 2027. And the other details of that trip will be in the numbers involved and so forth. Again, maybe the question about payment will be revisited later in the year. Sufficient for you.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. That gives us the guidance we need, and yes, a further report will come back to Council for the setting of the councillors to attend, but also taking on board the conversation, the work program that would be wanted to be achieved during that visit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So we then move to the adoption of the delegations register.
Thank you, Your Worship. That is in my name as well. This is a very brief procedural report as we come to the end of the meeting agenda, in public anyway. There have been a number of technical changes made to the Council's finance system. This is aligning the delegations register to that finance system, particularly around the roles of referencing instead of group managers, making them tier 2 managers so that there is greater clarity. These are relatively minor changes and don't impact councils, as in the elected members day to day. This is an operational matter, but needs approval from council as it is a council approved document.
Move the 3 recommendations.
Second.
Well, let me just say, before we do that, I will take questions. Are there any questions to Mr. Morris? No? Okay, feeling that. You're moving. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Bond. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Health, safety and wellbeing update.
Good afternoon. So you'll see that the health and safety dashboard now places greater emphasis on interpreting the results through a 12-month rolling average, rather than relying on solely a month-by-month fluctuations. So this provides a more stable review of underlying trends, smoothing out natural variability seen across operational areas. So in February, there was a range of health and safety and wellbeing incidents across council operations, including one that required time off work. This reporting supports continued organisational visibility of incident occurrences. Near-miss reporting remains strong and continues to contribute positively to early risk identification and hazard mitigation. Verbal abuse and threatening behaviour category recorded 12 events in February. While this was lower than the rolling average, the trend remains an ongoing area of concern given the nature of our frontline roles and regular customer interaction across several service areas. Across the infrastructure and property teams, 35 inspections were completed in February. These provide ongoing assurance over contractor activities, especially those involving high-risk work. So February's data shows a stable reporting, increased visibility of low-level injuries, continued monitoring of verbal abuse trends, and steady use of wellbeing supported services. Any questions?
Yeah, any questions of Corinne? No questions? Will someone move that we receive that paper? Thank you, Councillor Boyle, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Is there any other discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Corinne. So then we have the ICHL Statement of Intent. Welcome back, Rhiannon.
So this is providing the draft statement of intent. I'll just note that those matters that were discussed through the earlier phase of the letter of expectation have been responded to, and the report notes a slightly amended financial position but commitment to continue to provide the dividend.
You're asked to receive and note, and we're asked to note because it aligns with the letter of expectation. So there's no change from, it doesn't divert from the letter of expectation that we provided them.
Correct.
Correct. So questions? So we'll take both of them at the same time then in that case. Sorry, were you asking a question?
I was just going to, Mr Mayor, I was just going to move them both.
Pardon?
I was just going to move 1 and 2.
Okay, thank you. And seconded by Councillor Dermody. Any further discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Takes us to the Water Member remuneration.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is in my name. As you will be aware, Council has provided for an independent member to be appointed to the Water Committee. As part of that, that role does need to be remunerated as in accordance with our other independent members, including the Risk and Assurance members. An appointment committee has met and has conducted its interviews and does have a preferred candidate who would be recommended through to the Water Committee to recommend through to Council in April for appointment. This paper is setting their level of remuneration. We provided 3 bands based on advice through from Sheffield's. Further advice from Sheffield's that came after I had prepared this report was that Sheffield's felt a remuneration figure of approximately $30,000 would be about right given the level of commitment required, but also their liabilities and other risks that they're taking on. So that was the advice through from Sheffield's, Your Worship, and I'm happy to answer such questions as I can on this.
Yes, Councillor.
So the
sorry,
it's me.
Sorry, I missed that. I thought it was Councillor Ludlow's hand.
That's all right.
Sorry, Councillor Boyle.
He's wrong hand. Is it the person who was appointed, are they happy with any level of this remuneration?
I believe that the figure that came through to me from Sheffield's was as a result of some discussions that have been had with the candidates. My understanding is yes, but the Appointments Committee may have a better or clearer idea on that.
Okay. Councillor Dermody, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, all the information's in the paper, but the recommendation from, sorry, it's not a recommendation. What Michael Morris has just said in relation to Sheffield's, this role's been scoped by them, and not the expectation, but for the consideration of the role and the capability that we're taking on here, you know, the option 2 is where we should be at. You know, option 3 is below, if you look at the comparison, for example, for the independent member of the risk audit and risk. So, you know, option 2 is where we need to land on this from my perspective.
So, another question from Councillor Pottinger.
The question is regarding, is this remuneration purely the wage for this independent, and then there's costs on top of that if he's travelling to here, or is this the whole lot? This is the max.
Would be remuneration for the role. Disbursements, any disbursements such as travel, are always included on the top.
Okay, so do we know if this person's from Auckland and has to fly down on a jet and stay in a hotel for 2 nights?
I think, particularly since we're in public, it'd be inappropriate to answer that, because bear in mind that there's still candidates there at the moment.
Yeah, but what we're doing is approving funding.
No, but I'm saying if we discuss where the person lives, then who that person is becomes obvious. Whereas at the moment there's a range of candidates.
Okay, I'll stick with that. Okay, a range of candidates, but regardless of where the candidates are, is there travel and accommodation on top of, say, B, that Councillor Dermody's put forward?
Yes. That is extra. It's a disbursement.
That disbursement could be significant depending on where they come from. I mean, it could be. I mean, obviously, you know, Gore versus Auckland. I'm not saying it are, but when are we going to actually know about that amount to approve it?
That will become clear when the Appointments Committee makes its recommendation to the Water Committee on who is being appointed. There will be some clarity on any disbursements that are there, but also noting that there is not a requirement for every meeting to be an in-person meeting.
And there is no answer to that question then?
Well, there is no answer because we don't know who the person is, so it's impossible to put a dollar sum on it. But there's a very clear answer that the remuneration is separate from the travel costs and expenses.
I understand
so
that.
Travel costs and expenses are going to be in addition to whatever we agree here, but how much those are impossible to know because we don't know who the successful candidate is. So, any other questions, Councillor Crackett?
No questions. Just wanted to support Councillor Dermody in that if he would like to move the 2 recommendations with the remuneration for option 2.
So, do we have to move the range or do we have to move a number?
You could range either, Your Worship. I would recommend putting the 30,000 in as a figure, and if that needs to come back to council to adjust, then that would be the consequence.
I think, on the other hand, having been down this track before, at least if you agree a range, mind you, we are in public. Yeah, okay. So I think it's up to you.
Look, taking on board Councillor Pottinger's comments, you know, a range gives the opportunity for the committee to set the overall cost of the role, which may include some of those other costs. So my request or recommendation would be you go with the range between 30 and 35 as the remuneration. Remuneration, as we know, is not just the salary.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, so that's what I'd, 30 to 35.
Any other discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. To the Chief Executive's Management Report, 20 plus 5. Chief Executive's Management Report.
You through yourself, Your Worship. It's been a while coming for this report.
Sure, it was worth waiting for Michael.
There's actually not a lot to add into this report. You would have heard today we've crept up to 38 in relation to our legislative changes. But what I wanted to highlight in this report, there's only the two things that have got a particular interest just at the moment, which is the National Infrastructure Plan that's out. Look, we do have a few projects of our own that are sitting on there, so that was nice to see in relation to that. But having said that, they're working on a 30-year infrastructure plan, and that's through the Infrastructure Commission. The other thing I want to highlight, which is attracting a lot of attention at the moment, which is changes in relation to the dog control, particularly in response to a number of tragic events that have occurred in the North Island in relation to dog attacks, but prone to happen anywhere in relation to it. So some tightening down in relation to that, and does have Minister's focus at the moment. I can say I've received a letter from the Minister, but haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I'll be looking at that as soon as I can. I'll leave it there and open the questions.
No questions. So we are asked to receive the report. Will someone move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Chow McNaughton, and seconded Councillor Stewart. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. So that brings us to the end of the public part of this meeting. So for those of you who have stayed through the whole thing and are about to leave us, thank you for bearing with us, and I'm afraid we have to say farewell.
If we go into public excluded
Oh,
for the reasons
Seconded.
Moved by Councillor Ludlow, seconded by Councillor Stewart. All those in favour say aye.